BRI Digital Innovation continues to be carried out to facilitate customers in providing services to continue to give value to Indonesia.
BNI harus semakin proaktif dan responsif.
BNI terus konsisten untuk mendorong UMKM kita naik kelas.
BNI berkomitmen dalam program-program pemberdayaan UMKM untuk go global.
In Bank Mandiri, we are already one step forward, pioneering Indonesia's transition to low-carbon economy by pursuing net zero emissions on operational by 2030. Let's put our hands together to create a brighter future.
Mining Industry Indonesia, Mind ID, we explore natural resources for civilization, prosperity, and a brighter future.
BRI is a large state-owned enterprise that focuses on the MSME segment. BRI Digital Innovation continues to be carried out to facilitate customers in providing services to continue to give value to Indonesia.
BNI harus semakin proaktif dan responsif.
BNI terus konsisten untuk mendorong UMKM kita naik kelas.
BNI berkomitmen dalam program-program pemberdayaan UMKM untuk go global.
In Bank Mandiri, we are already one step forward, pioneering Indonesia's transition to low-carbon economy by pursuing net zero emissions on operational by 2030. Let's put our hands together to create a brighter future.
Mining Industry Indonesia, Mind ID, we explore natural resources for civilization, prosperity, and a brighter future.
BRI is a large state-owned enterprise that focuses on the MSME segment. BRI Digital Innovation continues to be carried out to facilitate customers in providing services to continue to give value to Indonesia.
BNI harus semakin proaktif dan responsif.
BNI terus konsisten untuk mendorong UMKM kita naik kelas.
BNI berkomitmen dalam program-program pemberdayaan UMKM untuk go global.
In Bank Mandiri, we are already one step forward, pioneering Indonesia's transition to low-carbon economy by pursuing net zero emissions on operational by 2030. Let's put our hands together to create a brighter future.
Mining Industry Indonesia, Mind ID, we explore natural resources for civilization, prosperity, and a brighter future.
BRI is a large state-owned enterprise that focuses on the MSME segment. BRI Digital Innovation continues to be carried out to facilitate customers in providing services to continue to give value to Indonesia.
BNI harus semakin proaktif dan responsif.
BNI terus konsisten untuk mendorong UMKM kita naik kelas.
BNI berkomitmen dalam program-program pemberdayaan UMKM untuk go global.
In Bank Mandiri, we are already one step forward, pioneering Indonesia's transition to low-carbon economy by pursuing net zero emissions on operational by 2030. Let's put our hands together to create a brighter future.
Mining Industry Indonesia, Mind ID, we explore natural resources for civilization, prosperity, and a brighter future.
BRI is a large state-owned enterprise that focuses on the MSME segment. BRI Digital Innovation continues to be carried out to facilitate customers in providing services to continue to give value to Indonesia.
BNI harus semakin proaktif dan responsif.
BNI terus konsisten untuk mendorong UMKM kita naik kelas.
BNI berkomitmen dalam program-program pemberdayaan UMKM untuk go global.
In Bank Mandiri, we are already one step forward, pioneering Indonesia's transition to low-carbon economy by pursuing net zero emissions on operational by 2030. Let's put our hands together to create a brighter future.
Mining Industry Indonesia, Mind ID, we explore natural resources for civilization, prosperity, and a brighter future.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum 2023, implementation of ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific. We hope that everybody's starting this day with a great energy, so why don't we start this off with a great round of applause for all of us joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is truly an honor for me to stand before you as the master of ceremony for this remarkable event. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Sasha Lauder, and I've had the privilege of guiding you through the insightful discussions, engaging panels, and also networking opportunities that have defined the summit. Once again, we'd like to also extend our gratitude to each and every one of you for being an integral part of this event. Ladies and gentlemen, as we embark on the second day of the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum 2023, here at Ballroom 3, we will focus on inclusive digital transformation. Let's dive into another day of enriching conversations and connections. And for that, ladies and gentlemen, our next special session, we are very honored to have the CEO Fireside Chat addressing accelerating digital transformations, trends, challenges, and strategies. And so with that, we are pleased to have our moderator and speaker for this session, the Director of Business Development and Portfolio Management of ID Food and the Chairman of Tsinghua Unigroup to come on stage. Please welcome Mr. Dirgayuza Setiawan and Mr. Lee Bin. The stage is yours.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, mine doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Okay.
All right. Selamat pagi. Good morning to everyone. I hope it's working now. Yeah. Our pleasure is to have Mr. Lee, the chairman of Tsinghua Unigroup with us. Tsinghua Unigroup is one of the largest IT and conglomerate company in China that has a lot of influence on how we do digital going forward. And in this session this morning, we will talk with Mr. Lee on how he sees digital technologies going forward, what role will the Tsinghua Unigroup play, and also what will his investment strategy like in ASEAN. So, Mr. Lee,
please.
We know that the Tsinghua Unigroup has been at the forefront of digital transformation in China and beyond. What do you see are the major trends in the digital innovation industry, and how will this major trends impact how you command your company going forward?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. I think I feel very honored to have this chance to share some of our experience in digitalization, right here with our audience right here. I think the organizer told me that the audience here are the most important people in your industry and in your country, right? So I think today I'd like to, as user asked, share about some of our ideas in the digital economy. I think the digital economy is playing a more and more important role in the modern society. Actually, represented by 5G, IoT, cloud computing, big data, these technologies. Digital economy has been the main force, right, to restructure the world economy and competitive landscape, and also to reshape the business model and also the human's behavior, right? I think as the trend of digital economy, there are three key words. One is integration. That means there is a trend of acceleration of integration of the digital economy and the physical economy. The second word is transformation, right? That the world trade and from the production to distribution, from manufacturing to R&D, is currently changed a lot because of the digital economy. And also the third word is scale, right? Currently, the scale of digital economy has been around more than 50% of the total world whole economy. I think as for the ASEAN countries, right, I got a data that digital economy in ASEAN countries grows very fast. In the year of 2018, it's about $80 billion. But last year, 2022, it's already reached $200 billion. But if you compare, it grows very fast, but if you compare it with the major economies, right, in the world, the United States is $15 trillion. China is more than $8 trillion. Countries like Japan and Germany is more than $2 trillion. Comparing with the current ASEAN countries is $0.2 trillion. That is really some challenge, right? Because of the maybe ICT infrastructure kind of things. But that's also big opportunity, right? For ASEAN countries, it means big growth potential that later the digital economy growth will be a big momentum to help the whole economy grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insight, Mr. Lee. We know that the Tsinghua Unigroup have a lot of presence around the world, right? You have 100,000 employees. We know that you have 295 subsidiaries, majority owned by the group. And we also know that you have a factory now in Indonesia, in Karawang, with 700 employees. How do you see your group's strategy here in ASEAN, in Indonesia in particular? And how do you build capabilities within the group that is adaptable and sustainable so that you can address the challenges you mentioned going forward?
Yeah. So regarding Unigroup, as you mentioned, our strategy, right, for digitization, I think I'd like to share some of our experience while we've done in China, right? You can see this on the screen, right? Currently, we find opportunities, right, in several sectors.
Ditampilkan slide-nya?
Yeah. Can you show on the screen?
Yeah, they'll show it.
Yeah. So we are working on 5 areas, right, in the digitization activities. One is, can they show this slide on screen?
Boleh tolong slide-nya ditampilkan? Terima kasih.
Yeah. One is about innovative education, right? So we are, you can see it, right? Like the knowledge on the cloud, paperless education, and digital twin, so we can achieve education equality. So that our systems has been deployed in hundreds of schools and universities in China. And regarding the healthcare, right, these opportunities that you like to, because there are a lot of different systems in hospitals, they interconnect for different systems, and the unified resource centers can let you have a more efficient healthcare. And also regarding the transportation, the data perception and transmission, and also the people, road, vehicle, data flow can help you to do better decision making, right, on transportation. I see a lot of, the traffic, right, in Jakarta, right? That's why there are more people coming, right? And also about the finance and manufacturing, we have the intelligent finance and manufacturing. So we divide the digitization to 3 layers, right? One is the infrastructure layer, that you have the data center, server, right? The components. And the next layer is service layer, like cloud, network. And the next layer above is application, right? So, yeah. Go ahead.
Right. So, Mr. Lee, the pandemic has somewhat disrupted manufacturing, right? Especially the chip manufacturing and also the digital industry, not only in China, but also around the world. how does the pandemic disrupt the Tsinghua Unigroup, and what do you see are the main challenges and opportunities in the digital value chain post-pandemic?
Yeah. Okay. So I think for Unigroup, that we are kind of a very diversified group, that we actually have, you've talking about the challenges and opportunities, right? So we are kind of focusing 5 sectors, as we showed on the screen, that we have the ICT infrastructure sector, we have the cloud network and service, and we have mobile automotive electronics sector, and finance sector, and education sector. So one of the challenge for us is that we have very diversified portfolio, that you may lose focus, right? And also to achieve synergy among these companies is really a challenge. And we got more than 200 companies, right? So headache for me is to read the name of every CEOs of this more than 200 CEOs, right? So, but I mean, one of the strengths that we have is kind of that we have this kind of we can avoid the concentration risk if there is a cycle, right? We don't have to if the diversified portfolio can offset, right, the cycle time, and also the completeness of our business. I mean, that, as I mentioned, the 3 layers, right? We have different kind of the infrastructure layer, the service layer, and the companies. For example, when we do the digitization for financial sector, we are the shareholder of 2 insurance companies and 2 banks. So to implement the systems, you cannot just separate the IT and the business, right? So we have the real data, the real customer, so we can integrate that. The unique position of our group is that we can integrate all these things together to have some better kind of customer application scenario, right? Okay.
All right, so, you know, when we think of IT in China, right, there are several giants in the landscape. There's Huawei and there's you, right? Sometimes Unigroup is number 1 in certain sector, and Huawei number 2, but sometimes Huawei number 1 and Unigroup's number 2. You mentioned about the opportunities and risk of having a diverse portfolio. Do you see that your portfolio will expand in the future, or you will have more focus in IT, for example?
Yeah. I think our group is basically our products covers like server, computer, right? ICT products, and also the cloud service and the finance sector. We are going to focus on some third sector, but not only to be an IT company, because one of our strengths is that we have the complete supply chain that will be to some extent resilient and can kind of to some extent help us to cover the different to face different risks, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's focus on one of your key subsidiaries, right? I think this morning you mentioned to me you have around 20-something key subsidiaries, and one of them is the Unispender Corporation, which is doing IT on cloud, mobile internet. Is considered one of the best companies in China. What do you think is the reason why it's one of the best companies in China when it comes to IT services? And what do you think are your strategies going forward in the Indo-Pacific for this particular subsidiary?
Okay, yeah. I think Unispender is one of the leading ICT equipment and service provider in China. I think, as you asked, we think that our expansion, right, outside China is important. We want to be international and market-driven. So ASEAN area is a very important area that we want to expand our business, right? Currently, we already have 3 factories in ASEAN area. One in Indonesia, in Karawang, right? One in Malaysia, and one in Thailand. And we also have 2 rep offices in Singapore and Jakarta. But later, we hope that we can expand our business, like doing more, expand our manufacturing capabilities in ASEAN countries, to invest and set up more research R&D centers here in ASEAN countries, and also to set up territorial headquarters of our different subsidiaries. And another suggestion is we hope to set up an investment platform here that to invest in those projects that we cooperate with ASEAN countries, that Unigroup and some of the financial institutions is going to join. We'd also like to invite some sovereign fund or financial institutions from ASEAN countries to join that platform. And also, we also like to invite other strategic investors, financial investors all over the world, right, to all join us, because we think the more open you are, right, you will get more cooperation and more business. So we are open to not only the cooperation between China and ASEAN countries, but also to invite companies from different countries, from Europe, from the US, to join this whole consortium that we can work together. And I think to be open-minded and cooperative is very important to the success of the business. I think I have a new finding that because one of my good friends, Ambassador Johari, introduced me to some friends yesterday. I find that most Indonesian and ASEAN people is very open-minded and very cooperative and very warm-hearted, right? Do you agree? Yeah. So, So I think that is, you're talking about the opportunities. I think the biggest opportunity here is the people, right? The population, the potential, and also the cooperative and open-minded mindset, right, to work together. Right?
Last question, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
So my last point is on sustainability. Right? It's a big theme in Indonesia now and also in the Indo-Pacific. What would be your sustainability place going forward? You mentioned to me earlier you have some investment in EV. We also have some big EV players here in the room. How do you see EV or your sustainability goals going forward?
Yeah, this is actually sustainability is a big topic. I think we have invested in a lot in EV, in automotive electronics. But I think sustainability for the next generation is not only about the clean energy, the EV, right? I think it's also a big topic, also have something to do with the digitization, digital economy, and also with the next generation cooperation and competition. I think a lot of people is talking about the competition between companies, between countries. I think from my point of view, I think for the next generation, the most important theme is not the competition or cooperation between countries or between nations. I think the most important topic is about the competition, cooperation, and integration between the digital world and physical world, between the silicon-based AI and the carbon-based human being. Right? So for the later, we should study and work and learn from the digital world and make sure that the digital economy and the AI is generated by the people, stays with the people, and work for the benefit of the people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lee, for sharing the stage with me. I hope the audience learned a lot of insight from Mr. Lee.
Thank you very much to our moderator and to our esteemed speaker for this enlightening session, and you may now return to your seat. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Now let us move on to the next agenda. As the Vice Minister of State-Owned Enterprises of the Republic of Indonesia will present a short yet comprehensive presentation on the topic Financial Digital Transformation within the State-Owned Enterprises, intending to accelerate inclusivity before the participants can engage in a deeper deliberation during the panel discussion. Without further ado, let's welcome to the stage His Excellency Rosan Roeslani.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Nama Budaya, Salam Kebajikan. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored and delighted to be here today to discuss the digital transformation of Indonesia's state-owned enterprises and how it's making our country more inclusive. To begin with, ASEAN is a home to more than 650 million people, and 70 million SMEs faces a significant financial inclusivity challenge. Over 70% of its inhabitants are either underbanked or unbanked. Additionally, around 39 million out of 70 million SME experience substantial funding shortfall amounting to 300 billion annually. We have seen that the advent of digital financial services is paving the way to bridge the financial divide, especially the underbanked, unbanked, and SMEs. These services play a pivotal role in promoting financial inclusivity, a cornerstone for sustainable and inclusive economic growth in the region. Digital finance initiatives across the ASEAN region have already contributed to accelerating financial inclusivity in the region. Over recent years, clear progress has been observed, with SOEs playing a pivotal role in guiding the transformation amidst the surge of digital financial wave. We have seen example in the ASEAN countries that the growth and the revolution of digital finance have boosted the nation economy and reduced inclusivity. Thus also happened in Indonesia for the past few years. Indonesia has been the forefront of the digital finance revolution, showcasing remarkable growth and resilience. Between 2011 to 2022, fintech players in Indonesia increased by sixfold from around 51 to more than 300 active players. Meanwhile, 33% of the population voted for e-wallets for their default payment method in 2021, positioning Indonesia alongside some of the most developed ASEAN economies. Indonesia's transition towards a digital economy is evident, with cashless payment leaping from 813 million to 26.2 billion from 2017 to 2022. Such a transition leads to a thriving digital transaction ecosystem. This is demonstrated by the gross transaction value of digital payment, which grew from around 206 billion in 2019 to an impressive 266 billion in 2022. Even more promisingly, we anticipate this figure to be more than 400 billion by 2025. While we recognize the challenges of accessing formal credits that a portion of our regional adult population face, we believe that Indonesia is making to tackle this challenge. The digital lending sector has exhibited robust growth, expanding its loan book from 1 billion in 2017 to 5 billion in 2022. This rise emphasizes our commitment to ensuring financial inclusivity for all Indonesians. State-owned enterprises significantly contribute to Indonesia economy, accounting of 18% of 2021 budget, given their substantial reach, particularly in underserved cities. SOEs are crucial players in fostering financial inclusivity via digital finance. Over the past few years, SOEs are stepping up catalysts and have developed visionary initiative and strategic collaboration to transform Indonesia digital financial services in various aspects. 3 examples are especially noteworthy. First, digital lending. Our SOE banks, BRI, Mandiri, and BNI, launched a digital lending platform to enable individuals without traditional credit histories to access financial services. These initiatives are making significant impact on financial inclusion. For instance, BRI's digital loan grew 146% from 2021 to 2022, providing more than 125 million to millions of digital loan within the third quarter of 2022 alone. Second, digital payment, e-wallet. Multiple SOEs have extended payment for its core services through e-money platform for customers. And the third example is digital banking. Mandiri, BRI, BNI, and BTN have built digital banking solution. BNI mobile banking, for instance, has grown 59% year-on-year to 7.8 million users in 2020. From the ASEAN perspective, in recent years, the ASEAN digital financial sector has witnessed transformative shift, primarily directed towards amplifying financial inclusion for consumers and SMEs. Anticipated growth in this domain is robust, with digital payment volume predicted to surge. Meanwhile, the digital lending landscape is not far behind, expecting to grow significantly by 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, financial inclusion is not merely an economic objective, but a social imperative. It is our sincere hope that the discussion in this forum will generate solutions to financial inclusivity challenges that we are facing in the region and to maintain stability and prosperity in the region. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's extend our appreciation to our briefer for shedding the light on the crucial topic of financial digital transformation within the state-owned enterprises. Thank you once again, Your Excellency, for your presentation. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are very delighted to welcome all of you today at the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum, implementation of the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific. This is a flagship event organized by Indonesia as part of its ASEAN chairmanship in 2023. This forum aims to unlock further opportunities and build stronger connectivity between ASEAN countries and the Indo-Pacific. It will serve as an inclusive platform for ASEAN member states and partners, mainly from the public and private sectors, to engage in constructive discussions, identify potential tangible projects, and promote collaboration in the Indo-Pacific. There are 3 major issues of the future which will be discussed together. First of all, the green infrastructure and resilient supply chains. Second, sustainable and innovative financing. And third, digital transformation and creative economy. For the green infrastructure and resilient supply chain, the subtheme aims to explore ways to foster green and sustainable infrastructure development, as well as fortifying supply chains against global disruptions. And for sustainable and innovative financing, it aims to discuss efforts to mobilize funds for green initiatives and accelerate sustainable development. And ladies and gentlemen, of course, for the digital transformation and creative economy, it also aims to address concrete ways to leverage technology and innovation in order to drive economic growth and diversification, promote creativity, and empower businesses in the digital era through digital transformation and also creative economy. We are also very honored to have invited 88 speakers and gathered around 2,500 participants from 51 countries. And together, ladies and gentlemen, after following our briefer today, we will now begin the first panel discussion, which hopefully we can gain some insights from. We will turn our attention to the panel discussion, which will delve into the critical theme of bridging the digital divide, opportunities and challenges in digitalizing infrastructure and micro, small, and medium enterprises. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we would have our moderator and also our key speakers to join us here up on stage very soon. And again, we do hope that all of you can enjoy this session today, as we still have other panels which will follow very soon. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our moderator, Mr. Pandu Shahrir, the founding partner of AC Ventures. And also, we have the honor to invite our esteemed speakers today, Mr. Khairussaleh Ramli, CEO of Maybank, Mr. Silvano Winston Rumantir, Wholesale International Banking Director of BNI, Ambassador Gurjit Singh, Board Chair of Intellecap, and Mr. Hyun Gyoon, CEO of LG CNS.
Can you guys hear me in the back? Good morning, everyone. It seems so excited. You know, it's day 3, since Saturday. We're having this big event. You know, before I start, because all the speakers here have such remarkable careers, because the topic today is about inclusive digital transformation. I have to bring in a little bit of noise. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. Thank you. So I know this is day 3 of this long week. Before we start with the Q&A, we have 45 minutes. I need to give a little bit of background of each of the speaker and the relevance. So that we're going to do quick question and answer, 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, and I wanted to get this rolling. But Pak Khairul actually was here 10 years ago as the CEO of Maybank Indonesia. He's today chairman of Maybank Indonesia. And Maybank in Indonesia is very much well-loved. It's one of the very famous names in terms of an ASEAN bank. So Pak Khairul has known Indonesia for quite some time and is also building a digital platform all across ASEAN. Pak Silvano is a dear friend. He's an avid runner, very good runner, but also at the same time, he's an incredible banker. Today he serves as the corporate banker, but he's also responsible for the new digital bank in BNI, which is one of the largest bank in Indonesia. Mr. Gyoon, Mr. Ambassador first. Mr. Ambassador, he was actually an ambassador here in Indonesia when Pak Joko Widodo was governor, and your house was next to each other back then, And Pak Ambassador has also written a book about Indonesia, and today he serves as board chair of Intellecap. And I want to ask him so many questions of what we can do together between India and Indonesia. And lastly, Mr. Gyoon, LG is so famous here, Pak. You know, since 1970, you've been here. I'm sure some of you have an LG, at least LG TV, right? But also, what's interesting today, you're doing very much high-value technology, such as battery, and you'll touch a bit on CNS. So, just got to give a background. So, this is such an international panel. And I'm going to do Q&A this time, maybe about a minute, 2 minutes, fast. Then build upon each other, okay, Pak? Pak Khairul, I'm going to start with you first, Pak. Your team says I only can ask 1 or 2 questions, but as some of you know, I don't really follow the script, so I apologize. No problem. But Pak Khairul, maybe just talk a little bit what you've been doing in Indonesia. How different is Indonesia through your experience with other markets in ASEAN? And what do you find so exciting today, Pak?
Pandu, just a big introduction of Maybank first.
Please, Pak.
We are, I think, the only bank in ASEAN that has got presence in all 10 ASEAN countries. We are number 4 by asset size, about $220 billion. And in Indonesia, we have got 11,000 staff out of the 43,000 staff. So almost 25% of our employees are here. So as Pak Pandu mentioned, I was here 10 years ago. And now I'm back as chairman of the bank itself. And I've seen huge development and progress, I must say. At that time, we only knew Gojek. Yeah, but now we got GoTo, we got Tokopedia, we got Bukalapak, etc. So one key development has been the presence of huge marketplaces, yeah, for people to do B2B or even B2C. And this has enabled a lot of the SMEs to join this marketplace and showcase their products and have a market to then sell their products. The second part that I see is the proliferation of digital payments. And digital payments have also come along in terms of building their own ecosystem, right? The third part is about ability of funding and financing. So not just the traditional banks now, you've got the fintechs, and you also got the introduction of a lot of digital banks, right, in Indonesia. So marketplace, digital payments, and financing as far as cash flow. That's from trend point of view. The other one that I see is the support from the government and also agencies like Central Bank. We know that Bank Indonesia over the last 3 years or so, they have introduced many initiatives to promote digital payments. The QRIS, right? The SNAP, right? And also the infrastructure for digital payments. So, so there has been a lot of support from the government and central bank in terms of promoting digital transactions as well. OJK, for example, has introduced a sandbox to enable banks to start testing using non-traditional data to support their credit scoring. The last part I would say, Pak Pandu, is this inclusivity agenda and sustainability, right? SME falls under that category. So banks are pushing a lot as part of their SDG initiatives, as well as their own sustainability drive to reach out to the SMEs. I'll stop here.
Fantastic, Pak. You talked about this so well, and I think you touched well that on the regulator matters so much, right, in terms of promoting this growth. And what you touch upon on ecosystem, that's something that we're seeing quite well, Pak.
Yeah.
Pak Silvano, building upon Bapak's comments, what are the key things that your bank is doing now? Because I know you're developing something we call Maybank, I think, am I right? Yep. Maybe you can share a bit the story.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, as we all know, almost 100%, 97% of our employees are employed in the SME sector, MSME sector. And that accounts for about 60% of our GDP. But yet, about half of these MSMEs are informal or not yet included in the banking system. And so access to financing for at least half of them has been very, very limited, right? That's why we are very certain that the involvement of digital is going to be very key. And that's what has driven our decision to last year acquire a majority stake in Bank Mayora, which is owned by a very prominent FMCG. And a few months ago, we launched the bank, or relaunched the bank, under a new name called Maybank. And the purpose of Maybank is to serve the MSME sector using digital infrastructure.
Focus so much on the banking sector, and this discussion is digital transformation. You can share a bit outside of your experience. I'm going to ask another question on you, but just briefly on the company that you're with today, and what are you thinking about the digital that's happening in India and you can bring here into this part of the world?
Thank you, Pak Pandu. It's great to be back. I was very happy to see State Minister because, he has transitioned from business to being an ambassador, and I have transitioned from ambassador to being business. So this is the kind of a transformation too. So the company that I chair is actually part of a large group, which is one of India's biggest impact investing companies. One of our group companies is actually what you are talking about, a Fi Digital for MSMEs. And our overall impact is to reach what we call the next 3 billion of unbanked people. At the moment, we have touched about 200 million, 130 million families, particularly focusing on 67 unbanked women entrepreneurs at the grassroots. So that is the impact that we are making. And a large amount of this is actually digital. Now, coming to your larger question about things. So, you know, yesterday when President Jokowi spoke about the ASEAN outlook for the Indo-Pacific, for which I understand this forum is the action plan, he mentioned 4 areas: maritime cooperation, connectivity, sustainable development, and economic cooperation. So there is the India's Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, which has precisely the same objective, and India and ASEAN have a joint cooperation to work together. So next few days, we will have the G20 in India, like you had last year. So the outcomes of that provide the future direction for what you said. We are going to look at the digitalization of trade documents. We are going to look at enhancing information access to MSMEs, a framework to map global value chains, and best practices on mutual recognition agreements for professional services. In fact, the G20 trade and investment ministers basically came up with 3 ideas: a generic framework for mapping global value chains, an action plan for enhancing MSMEs' access to information, and high-level principles on digitalization of trade documents. Now, if you see what we are doing together, you in Jakarta, we in India, you see how much commonality there is. And that is where India's digital public goods, on which I can speak later, actually can make a very big impact.
Yeah, I'm going to ask this because I was just in Bangalore for 4 nights. And by the way, Bangalore just opened a new airport. It's kick-ass beautiful. You guys got to go. It's amazing. But I want to ask back on this because it's amazing what's been going on there. Mr. Gyoon, I want to go to you because I'm also going to Korea next week. And, you know, I've been going to Korea, I think 3 times a year, 4 times a year now. And please share with me in terms of, you maybe share a little bit about your business and what does digitalization mean to you, to your consumer, and to your stakeholders. And maybe share with Indonesia what your plan is.
Okay. Many people knows about the LG Electronics, and many people have electronic appliances at home, but not many people know about the LG CNS. LG CNS is to help our some B2B customer like enterprise to utilize digital technologies to make their some business, create their business value, or to provide the better services for from the government side. In these days, digitalization or digital transformation is, you know, is a very important pieces to create the business values, and everybody agrees that. However, the question is, you know, where to apply the technologies, or for what purpose, and how to apply the technologies, and how to acquire or have the digital technologies. And the final question is, who will do? Let me take a smart city as an example that Indonesian government is trying to do, build a smart city like Nusantara. You know, in these days, ASEAN region is very rapid urbanizations due to some economic growth. And urbanization is very good, but causes many problems like pollution, or traffic, or transportations, energy, or crime rate. So what the purpose of a smart city? the purpose of smart city is to resolve these kinds of issues. The smart city is not build a space. We have to consider the digital services first. That is the purpose of smart city, and that is the purpose of the digital transformations. And what kind of technologies we have to do for smart city? Now we have to use some traditional IT technologies and also IoT or AI or cloud or a lot of some platforms you have to use. And who will do? And there are some 4 stakeholders in the smart cities. One of them is the government. The other one is the enterprises. And actually there are 2 types of enterprise. One is a big enterprise and small and medium-sized enterprises. Those 2 types of enterprise will do some different law for the smart cities build. And the final part is the investor. To build a smart city requires a lot of money. So we have to get some fund from some various parts. So one of them is an investor, and one of them is a private sector, like us. We also invest to build a smart city as a service provider. So data transformation is not easy, but that creates a lot of value. So we have to, but I want to focus on, we have to focus on the purpose, not the device. We don't have to, if we focus on technologies, then sometimes we are missing the middle of the way. So to do some transformations, we have to think about the purpose of the digitalization.
By the way, from the audio and visual, please help Mr. Gyoon. Give a mic, please. I feel. So can somebody please from audio and visual, please help Mr. Gyoon with mic. Maybe Pak Khairul, I'm gonna come back to you. And then I'll go back, I'll do the circle. Maybe you can share a bit also. You mentioned the 3 things that have been the pillar of growth and hopefully success. What are the key things with respect to digitalization that you worry most right now, top of mind on your board, that you think about digital, AI, and in terms of market penetration? Is there anything that makes you, lose sleep about?
If you're talking about from the banking perspective, as we go digital, yes, we are trying to make things very efficient, cost-effective, simple for our customers. The biggest concern now is on cybersecurity. The biggest concern is on fraud online. So because banks have always been entrusted with money, right? So the expectation is that even if we go digital, trust must be there, and hence cybersecurity, online fraud has to be defeated. Yeah. Because otherwise, the blame will always be on the banks. You can see now in terms of transactions, wherever the fraud is, in many cases, it's actually the customers themselves who are the fault. But end of the day, the public perception is that banks are not doing enough. So to me, from that point of view, in my view, that is one thing that will keep us awake at night from a banking point of view.
Do you, maybe a follow-up question to you, but with respect to that, how are you thinking about the infrastructure or digital infrastructure that you're building? We mentioned before we were here, a bunch of us in Goto, there's about 1,000 programmers that's in India. Yourself also quite deep. How are you thinking about this talent movement in terms of building this digital infra?
It's not easy because everyone, not just the banks, are fighting for this talent, right? Like GoTo, you have people in India. We also have about 400 people in Bangalore, just doing coding, etc. Now, we have got this aspiration now of our workforce. We've got about almost 8% of workforce which is digital and tech savvy. Our target is by 2020, 2030, we will have 20%. Yeah, 20%. Because again, that is the movement, right, towards that. Everyone needs to speak digital. Everyone is focused on customer centricity. Yeah, it's a way to go.
20%, that's incredible number, Pak. That's a very good number. So to Silvano, I'm going to do off script on you, yeah. But you build a high bank. How come not BNI just become the digital bank instead? Why are you building this high bank? And how will high bank be different than, say, other banks that's out there that doing digital banking?
Yeah, that's a great question. So As some of you know, BNI was the first bank established after independence. That's why it's called BNI 1946. In fact, a piece of history, when we were established, we were the first central bank and also a commercial bank, so dual function. Bank Indonesia didn't exist in 1946, 1 year after independence. Only a few years later, when Bank Indonesia was established, then BNI continued to operate as a commercial bank. And as you can see, we're not that young. We're 77 years old this year. We have close to 50,000 employees, and a bank that has never been merged, acquired, unlike some of our brothers and sisters in the SOE space. And so we feel, and we're not a technology expert, right? So we admit with the high costs or high operating costs that a typical large commercial bank carry, the typical mindset that a large and old conventional bank has, despite the management, including myself, we're reasonably new. We're just 3 years in this bank. We realized that no, you can't make BNI totally digital. It's going to be costly. It's going to take time. The kind of people you need for digital is very different. And that, combined with the government's aspiration to have some consolidation in the banking industry and the white space that we see in the MSME space, led us to the decision to acquire Bank Mayora, which is a small bank, right? I mean, the loan book is only 4 to 5 trillion rupiah. So it's still small enough for us to mold it into what we want to be, right? And it's going to be more cost efficient. We have also teamed up, not just with Mayora, but we've also teamed up with C, the owner of Garena and Shopee, as our technology partner. Pandu, you would know this very well. Because we know we're not a technology company. So we know banking practice, we have efficient cost of fund, we have market access, but we're not a technology company. Mayora is the largest FMCG group in the country. They have a very large supply chain ecosystem, merchants, etc., which we can tap, which we are tapping right now. Combine that with C. And nobody in management comes from BNI. Because if you put someone from BNI in management, Highbank will turn into BNI, which is not what we want.
That's a great point. Thank you. But just wanted to share that, I mean, the key takeaways is that there are two different strategies. There's no real one strategy to go about this. But it's so interesting because the idea of digital, especially in the banking sector, is so wide open. That's why you're having two different theses to attack this. Mr. Ambassador, and that's why I wanted to go back to India. The one thing, and this is so incredible about India, I just learned the last 15 years, there's about 450 million new people in India. And when you talk about a family in India, I learned this too, but in Indonesia, it's usually a family is called 4 people. In India, it's 6, right? And in the span of 12, 15 years, India generated 450 million people. Let's just put that in perspective. That's about 2/3 of all of ASEAN. Pak, please share, what is DPI? This is like mind-boggling for me. What is DPI and how has that helped transform society in India, and how can that be something, a lesson learned for all of us here in ASEAN?
Thank you. So India has been looking at financial inclusion of people. So whether we talk of MSMEs or banks, and as he just pointed out, when you acquire a supply chain with consumers, your business goes up. So please remember, and I think my colleague mentioned, that the people are most important. So when you have a large number of unbanked people, how do you bring them in? That's financial inclusion. And for that, we created digital accounts. So you could open a zero balance account in any bank. So that suddenly brought 450 million people with bank accounts. So today, when you want to do a government transfer of a benefit, you don't go through any middleman. You simply put it into the bank. And how do you do it? Digitally. So all of us, my driver has an app on his phone by which he gets money from the government and he operates his bank account. And when I have to pay him salary, I pay him digitally. No money, digital. That is digital. Now, when COVID came, suddenly you couldn't go anywhere. So this impact of digital became the infrastructure. Today, everything was, my vegetable vendor would take digital payments. So under the UPI, the Unified Payments Interface, which now India is also working with Singapore and hopefully with all of ASEAN, we have crossed 10 billion transactions. Now, this is amazing. When during G20, we have so many ministers from the OECD countries, and they wonder, how does your vegetable vendor run a bank with this purely digital payment system? Second thing, we use CoWIN app, so under which you can have your entire vaccination status on the app. But more than that, I have on my phone an app called DigiLocker. So I have got my vaccination, I've got my passport, I've got my driving license, I've got my identity documents and my tax registration, all electronically available, and more are coming. So this interface is basically bringing government closer to people, reducing discretion and making, transactions seamless. This is where government is investing its money. And in return, you are getting a large number of people now become part of the economy. Thank you.
Yeah, UPI is so cool because that 4 days or 5 days I was in Bangalore, we learned so much. It's actually a way for payment, similar to Curus, but they extended it. It becomes everything. It becomes your social security. It becomes your digital identity. And what's interesting is that those that are in the sustenance level, which is about 15% of Indian population, they're able to get money directly from that. That's why I think for a lot of us here that don't know in Indonesia, it's almost like your Peduli Lindungi transformed with GoPay, something like that, right? But just to give some color because I was blown away, to be honest. Mr. Gyoon, maybe one thing you want to ask because Korea is really a high-tech industry and a high-tech industrial nation. But what are the probably key things? Because I know now a lot of the discussion has been on energy transition, consumer also a big thing here in Indonesia. What are the key items that you want to focus on from your perspective as a CEO with respect to this market? What type of digital transformation or digital practices that you're doing in Korea that you want to share here?
Korea, like 60 years ago, there was nothing in Korea. But now, the economy is big. Why? Actually, we have to focus on two things. One is social infrastructures. The other one is manufacturing. We have many big manufacturing companies, like LG. LG is one of the biggest manufacturing companies in the world, and Samsung is also one of the biggest companies in the world. The manufacturing is, we try to many things, but one of them is digitalization, to make manufacturing excellence. And we put a lot of money to make the process efficient, and also the IT is working fine for the manufacturing products. And also we are using the digital technologies to design the products and services. I don't know, but many ASEAN countries are focusing on different parts of the economy and domain industries. However, the manufacturing, if you focus on the manufacturing industry, and manufacturing industry will be one of the most important part, then you have to know how to digitalize the manufacturing processes from the design to manufacturing and provide the services to the customer. So that's one point I want to focus. And the other one is the infrastructures. government needs to put a lot of money and invest to provide the infrastructures, especially for digital infrastructures, data centers, and network band, and something like that. So those are two my points.
Very good. Thank you. That's very thoughtful. But so we have about 5 minutes. I want to go the last question to each one of you. So I know this is it's been a great gathering, and it's actually the first time with some of you as new friends. If there's something that you can share, one thing, maybe for the next 6 to 12 months, what does this ASEAN mean for you, obviously as a CEO, as a chairman, and what does that mean also for your business that you perhaps can share with the wider audience here? Maybe I'll start with you, but it'll be the same question for each one of you. With you first, Pak.
If you look at EU, for example, they have a single passport and they can go everywhere. We have been talking something like that for ASEAN. But what if we have a single digital account for everyone in ASEAN, right? So wherever you go, you just use that account to transact. Yeah. So that means, of course, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Yeah. But I think that's a vision. One digital account for ASEAN population.
Yeah. That's great, because that's what the QR code that we're pushing as part of a legacy in ASEAN Back. Essentially, it's not just free money, but at the end, we actually want free people movement across ASEAN Pak, which I think would benefit each one of the nation states. Thank you, Pak. Thank you for that. Pak Silvano?
What does ASEAN mean to us in BNI? I think it means everything. We know that as a country, we do a lot of intra-ASEAN, intra-Asia trade. It just so happened that BNI is also Indonesia's international bank. We have the most number of branches among all Indonesian banks, so trade is very important to us. So I think the growth is here in this region. Secondly, I think what we would also like to see as a wish list is maybe a bit more reciprocity on the banking sector among the countries. I mean, we fully understand. I guess the growth rate and the margins are very promising in Indonesia, so it makes sense for a lot of the international banks expand here. But I think selectively, given that we have 8 million migrant workers spread all over the world, diaspora is very important to us. I think some selective form of reciprocity in the banking sector, I think, would be beneficial for all.
Thank you, Pak Silvano. So more level playing field or equal treatment, that's probably one of the things you wish for. Thank you, Pak. Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you. I would like to go a little macro. For me, what I'm most impressed about is the ASEAN Digital Economy Framework Agreement. I think that is really going the right way. But I think while this may take you to up to $2 trillion, as President also announced yesterday, we have some concerns. And these concerns are as follows. Technology must be interoperable. Please go the open source way. Don't fall for people who want to give you closed solutions. Second, governance standards that codify human rights and protection of personal data, privacy and intellectual property is very important. No unilateral controls for digital economy. This is very important. It has to be open. Don't subscribe to unitary controls. And finally, a community of private sector and civil society actors must collaborate. Don't depend on governments alone. That is where success will lie. And we hope that India would work with ASEAN on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak. That's very good 3 points, Pak. Thank you. Mr. Gyoon, last word from you.
Yeah, I totally agree with the open platform. To invite SMBs, small and medium-sized business, then the platform should be open. That means they can come to the open platform and create their own business, and then we can make our economy very healthy. One more thing is I want to point out to people. Everything is done by people. So LGCNS, my company, is trying to get some good talents from some various ways, like internship and support to universities to get some good talents at the very first stage. The other one is we are talking about technologies, but personally, I'm focused on the business side. I try to invite many some good business people, and try train them to understand technology. We always talk about technology engineers, but I'm also talking about the business skills persons. That is very important piece to create a real business value. The other thing is a customer. Customer should be included in the part of digital transformations. We always invite customer to apply advanced and new technologies to apply the real situations. So those 3 points are I want to make.
Thank you so much. Please give a round of applause to these incredible speakers. Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful time together here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah? Because they invested in
India. Of course. Yes, they have a big facility.
Thank you once again to our moderator and also to our esteemed panelists for this insightful session. Gentlemen, thank you very much, and you can return to your seat. But ladies and gentlemen, let's give another round of applause for this panel session. Thank you very much once again. And so, ladies and gentlemen, of course, at the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum 2023, we are aiming to again discuss 3 major issues of the future about green infrastructure and resilient supply chains, sustainable and innovative financing, and also digital transformation and creative economy. And we are very happy to organize this event for you as this second day for the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum implementation of the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, which is a flagship event organized by Indonesia as part of its ASEAN chairmanship in 2023. Now, as mentioned before, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the 3 major issues that will be discussed hopefully will bring us new and better insights. And with that, we will now move on to the next session. Ladies and gentlemen, as we move forward for the next agenda, it is my pleasure to call upon the Minister of Science and ICT of the Republic of Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage with a warm applause, His Excellency Jong-ho.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Lee Jong-ho, Minister of Science and ICT of Korea. Now, let me introduce you to the National Digital Strategy. In September last year, President Hyun highlighted the need for a new digital principle to actualize the universal values of humanity through digital technologies. The Korean government has established the National Digital Strategy as a roadmap for us to explore the new digital principle announced in the New York initiative. Korea has also carried out various activities to promote global solidarity, to share its vision and values of digital innovation. We have pursued digital innovation across all areas of technology, economy, society, government, and culture with the goal of becoming a global role model. For the past 1 year, we have produced meaningful outcomes. First, we have made intensive investment in innovative digital technologies, including AI chips and quantum computing. The national education system underwent an overhaul starting from 2025. The hours for digital tech course will be doubled, and from 2024, the university admission quota for high-tech programs will be increased. We have utilized AI to address scientific challenges and introduced data trading policies. Also, we have implemented a financial support policy worth $2.7 billion to digital tech SMEs and startups. Next, digital has promoted innovation not only in services, manufacturing, and agriculture, but also in social safety and human rights. We have mapped 27% of all national roads in 3D for autonomous driving. We also introduced AI-enabled ambulances and patrol cars to ensure public safety. Most of all, digital learning centers educated 800,000 people, and accessible kiosks for the elderly and disabled became mandatory. Lastly, we have promoted innovative digital platform government and fostered an innovating digital culture. We established a presidential committee on digital platform government in September last year and launched 6 flagship projects for our citizens. Government services were standardized and made accessible through open APIs. We also created a digital public sphere for public discussion on digital norms, and we reformed 63 regulations through the ICT regulatory sandbox. This is the way forward. We are already living in the digital era. Korea is establishing the Bill of Digital Rights as the principles for addressing emerging digital issues. In this month, I will introduce a draft version to you. Moreover, Korea will lead global digital cooperation, including digital ODA. Furthermore, starting in 2025, we will provide students with AI digital school books, integrating AI into people's daily lives. To boost the digital economy, we have launched K-Cloud project, which is developing low-power NPU cloud solutions. Finally, we will reduce welfare blind spot and minimize the damages from natural disasters through digital technologies. Korea will keep striving for innovation through digital technologies and work together with the world to establish new digital norms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for sharing your knowledge and insight with us today. We are very grateful for your contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, as we move on to the next session, we will also be following another panel which will be discussing about upskilling and reskilling for the digital transformation. As this is part of one of our sub-themes, one out of the three major issues that will be discussed, which is digital transformation and creative economy. The sub-theme aims to address concrete ways to leverage technology and also innovation in order to drive economic growth, diversification, promote creativity, and empower businesses in the digital era through digital transformation and creative economy. And again, we are very delighted that this forum has invited 88 speakers and have gathered around 2,500 participants from 51 countries. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's now move on into the next session. Again, for the next plenary, we will be discussing on the topic upskilling and reskilling for the digital transformation. Please allow me to invite on stage our moderator today, the Head of Evaluation, Research, Dissemination and Advocacy PMO Kartu Pekerja, Mr. Romora Edward Sitorus. And also we are pleased to have our esteemed speakers to also join us on stage. Ms. Utari Octaviani, CSO of Aruna, Dr. Lovnish Chanana, Senior Vice President and Head of Government Affairs Asia Pacific and Japan of SAP, Mr. Leonard Lim, Head of Public Policy and Government Relations for Asia Pacific of Zoom, and Mr. Chad Pasha, Senior Advisor to Government of Coursera. Moderator, I give the stage to you.
Everyone, and welcome to ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum Panel Discussion 2, session on inclusive digital transformation. We are here to delve into upskilling and reskilling for digital transformation, a subject that is of utmost importance in the rapidly changing global economy. I'm Romora Edward Sitorus. I'm a Head of Evaluation at PMO Kartu Prakerja, Indonesia's large-scale skill development program that has provided access to vocational training for 17.6 million people in less than 4 years. I have the honor of moderating today's enlightening discussion, and the objective of today's session is to consider how we can take a multi-stakeholder approach to ensure access to quality education that equips people with a range of skill and competencies. We are joined by a distinguished panel, each an expert in their field. We have Chad Pasha, who is the Senior Advisor and the Head of Asia-Pacific Public Sector at Coursera. He will bring a wealth of knowledge from the field of online education. Next, we have Dr. Lovnish Chanana, Senior Vice President and Head of Government Affairs for Asia-Pacific and Japan at SAP, a known thought leader. He leads transformative government projects and other important projects related to technology. We are also joined by Leonard Lim, the Head of Public Policy and Government Relations for Asia Pacific at Zoom. Leonard specializes in policy advocacy in areas such as data privacy, online safety, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. And finally, we have Ms. Utari, the co-founder and CSO of Aruna, who is leveraging technology to disrupt traditional fishing industries. So I'd like to start by asking all of you about the key skills that are in high demand today and how artificial intelligence is reshaping the future of work. Some research has shown that by 2030, as many as 375 million people are going to change occupation to meet companies' needs. From your perspective, what are the key skills that are in high demand today and how these skills evolve with the advancement of technologies such as AI? Also, if you may, could you give advice on how to create a technical talent pool to provide AI solution at different sectors? Dr. Lovnish, could you please start us off?
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for the question, and indeed an honor to be here. See, when we look at the emerging digital skilling paradigm, you need to look at it in the changing, emerging landscape of digital transformation. Now, what's that? I think let me set the context by, so we are now moving away from being digital. We are actually moving to a stage of becoming digitally intelligent. So that's the phase that we are moving in. And what is this phase about? This phase is about machines becoming our co-workers. You know, instead of processes consuming data, we are up to a stage where data is now defining processes. The dynamism is actually increasing. So what does it mean for skilling? It means for skilling a new set of skill sets. It means for skilling a new set of ways to address that. Now, and all of us recognize that skilling is important. If I answer the why part of it, there are, I think, 3 broad reasons why all of us should look at skilling as a very important area for the whole digital integration of ASEAN or otherwise that we are looking at. Talent shortage is a universally accepted phenomenon. And if you look at surveys like IDC, it says more than 60% of businesses feel, face problems in their digital transformation initiatives because of lack of skilling. Second, we also need to prioritize skilling. Just have a look at the Digital Integration Index ASEAN report. Out of the 6 pillars of infrastructure connectivity, skilling is ranked at the bottom at 6th. That is, it now needs to come up. And third, which is most important when we are talking about upskilling and reskilling, is that digital skill is no longer a vertical. Digital skilling is a horizontal. Look at the future of job reports by the World Economic Forum. 75% of their respondents in their report say that they are going to use cloud, big data, artificial intelligence, and this is sector independent. So you know, the skilling is becoming, now to answer your question of what roles are emerging. I think there are 2 kinds of roles which are emerging, the jobs. One, which are pure digital jobs or roles, and second, the upskilling and change in the existing jobs that we have. On this side, we have AI and machine learning. That is something that everybody is looking at in terms of the emerging job area and the role area. I think one important area that we will see increasingly coming up is this whole digital for sustainability roles that we will come. And everybody is today talking about sustainability. The digital would be a big enabler for sustainability, both in terms of green IT and IT for green. You know, so that's we will see huge roles, and particularly, and we did a study with, as ACP, we did a study with World Economic Forum and BCG. We found out that nearly 58% of the 395 million jobs that will be required to address the new jobs area will be in Asia. You know, so that's the opportunity that we have. Obviously, on the digital side, you will have other areas like the digital twin engineers. We will get cybersecurity professionals. You will get data privacy professionals. So these are some of the roles. Having said so, let's be prepared for the replacement and displacement of the repetitive roles, and be prepared for the focus on the high-value tasks in terms of bringing in the intelligence in the enterprises. Coming to AI, I think for AI, there are 2 broad areas on artificial intelligence. One, artificial intelligence for skilling. Second, skilling for artificial intelligence. Now, these 2 we need to look at. When it comes to AI for skilling, there is a huge advantage in actually latching on to this in terms of creating the personalized content, in terms of matching my current organizational skilling landscape with the market, and hence ensuring that the return on investment is actually in line. Now, when I talk about skilling for AI, I think everybody is taking AI as a revolutionary thing. It is actually evolutionary, and now only it is being perceived as revolutionary. We need to segregate it into 2 parts. One, the business AI and the consumer AI, and also horizontally the development skills and the deployment skills. Okay. To me, development skills are the core technical skills. You will also need deployment skills that will need reskilling of the existing, because the models will need to be trained in a health sector or others. That will need the domain expertise, and that's where reskilling will actually come in. So we are at a very interesting stage, and it's a multi-stakeholder effort that will bring in, and the three challenges that we would need to address as we move forward. One is the speed of change. Second is the dynamic nature of the jobs that's evolving. And third, this revolution is two-way. The data you give me, hence we will need to put everything in order, and we see how it moves forward.
Wow, thank you for the comprehensive and excellent points, Dr. Lovness. You mentioned about digital can be a key enabler, but we have to be ready that there will be job replacement everywhere if we are not available or ready to face the digital transformation. Chad, could you offer your thought on this, particularly from an online education standpoint?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So building on Dr. Chanana's points, I think the skills are quite a range of different skills, especially depending on the industries that workers will be going into. But I think on top of building on what he said, the human skills are also really critical. The ability to have critical thinking, adaptivity, innovation, critical reasoning, and also the ability to change your career throughout your life, because people have multiple careers. Let's say someone goes into cybersecurity or coding. It might be for pharmaceutical industry at first. It might then be for finance next. It might be for professional services. It could actually change throughout their career. Right. So building a culture of lifelong learning is really, really important, as well as those human skills, so someone can actually develop more from just the technical angle. That's what we get all the time. CEOs are saying, we love more coders, more analysts, more data scientists, but can they speak? Can they communicate? Can they explain what they're doing? Can they explain why they're doing what they're doing? That actually brings out more value in that particular person. So I think for the skills, it's that combination of technical and human.
Right.
And then in terms of the second point, the talent pipeline or the talent supply, it's really critical to have partnerships. So we sit in the triangle of kind of government, private sector, and academia. And what we do is we work very closely with governments and private sector to understand where the gaps are. So we have these industry roundtables. We did one in Chennai a number of times, focused on electrical vehicle manufacturing, then we're doing one on robotics. And each of these roundtables, we sit with the industry and we ask them, what are the jobs you need now in the next 2 to 3 years and 4 to 5 years? And from there, we actually understand and can map where those gaps are coming up. And then we work with government and private sector to essentially fund training at scale to address those gaps. The universities are not churning out people fast enough. I mean, you talked about this as well, Dr. Chanana. There's a huge time lag, and it's increasing and compounding year by year. And so that's where providers like Coursera and others sit. We can rapidly, more quickly adapt, provide that content, and it might be in bite-sized pieces. It's not going to be a 4-year learning track degree in a traditional sense. It might be, tracks like 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, just to get the exact skills that that person needs for a particular role. And then once they join into the role, they can actually expand and develop more practical skills. But those partnerships are really critical to have that supply of talent.
Wow, that's intriguing insight, Chad. I agree that lifelong learning habit should be for everyone, and it's important to learn not just 4-year degrees, but we also have to learn specific skills at different sectors. Leonard, can you share your views, especially considering your involvement in public policy on this?
Yes, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, yes. Just building on Dr. Chanana's and Chad's points, I think those were very good points. I think it used to be the case when you could stay in one job for many years and the job would stay the same. The skills would be the same. But today, that's impossible. Any job today, even if you stay in the same job, the nature of the job is changing week by week, month by month, and you really need to keep learning new skills. And building on, I think, Dr. Chanana's point about horizontal sort of effects of maybe AI. So there's really horizontal disruption now across all industries, across all sectors. It used to be the case that I think we all thought automation and computing would only affect the lower level jobs, or jobs with less education, because they would be replaced by machines and robots. But now I think higher education jobs, jobs which require creativity, are all at risk because of large language models like ChatGPT, a journalist's job is at risk. Who knows, one day all of us could be replaced by holograms because ChatGPT is so smart, right? So I think the desire to learn, like Chad mentioned, the lifelong learning aspect is very, very important in this day and age. So just on AI, I think, let's say a doctor, apart from medical skills, the desire to know more about data, a little bit of programming, and learning how to harness the insights from, say, big data of a large volume of X-rays, and harnessing the insights there to build on his doctor's prognosis, that's very important. So a lifelong learning appetite.
Wow,
will be key.
That's excellent point, Leonard. I do agree with you that our jobs are changing and we have to adapt to it. Moving on, we have Utari from Aruna. Utari, how does this conversation resonate with your work at Aruna?
Yeah, I think all of speakers bring a good point about how we need to adapt with the EI. But from Aruna perspective, I will try to bring a perspective from the people that live in the coastal, where most of them, they don't have any internet connectivity. So I can say most of the location, especially for the fishermen community, they still lack of knowledge about what is AI. Because most of them maybe don't understand what is internet, what is the effectiveness of using internet to their daily life. So I think before we move to that, it's very important to fill the gap where we need to understand and give them education about the maturity level for adapting technology. Because again, technology can be two-sided, right? One, they can be impacted positive to the community, but the second, they can impact it negative for the community itself. So before they move to more advanced technology, for example, applicating AI in their daily life, I think it's very important to fill the gap. And especially for the next generation, for the younger people that live not just in coastal, but maybe in all of ASEAN countries, to learn and understand more about the implication of using that technology. After that, after filling the gap, I think the AI can be very helpful for the industry, especially for the fisheries. It can help us to not just do the production, but also can help us to predict the future. So yeah, I think by collaborating with the all of the stakeholders like the private sector, the government, and also the academic, I think it can be help for the community, especially in coastals.
Thank you, Utari. Yeah, in many parts of the world, the digital literacy skills are still very low. So before we introduce them with advanced skills, we have to make sure we fulfill the skill gap that are still there. Moving next, Chad, can I ask you, how do you encourage individuals to engage in continuous learning, to stay adaptable in the face of ongoing technological advancements beyond initial education?
Absolutely. I would say there's 4 steps in terms of this engagement. The first is actually having the infrastructure and accessibility, so that learners from all over the world, whether they're in a rural area, an island, disconnected from an urban enclave, have access. And the way we do that is by offering full mobile compatibility. Not everyone has a desktop or a laptop, they have a mobile phone, so they can use our courses on their mobile phone. The second piece is the ability to work offline, because internet connection can be quite sporadic and spotty in different places. So we have a project actually in the Amazon rainforest for women and girls. They don't need constant Wi-Fi connection. They go to a hub, like a hotspot, once a week for trading, bartering goods, and they can then download a course. They go offline for the next 3-4 weeks, do their course completely offline. When it's time to go back to that local center for the next trade round, they go and then upload their results, get their certificate, and carry on. I think that's the first piece, is making sure it's accessible. And as part of that, localization is very important. So having content designed by people in a local area, in the local language, is incredibly important. So in Timor-Leste, Timor, we have a program where the local content is created in Tetum language by experts in the country, and it sits alongside Yale, Stanford, Oxford, Imperial College content from our side. And so learners have access to both. So they feel much more engaged and contextualized. So I think that's the first of the 4 steps, is having that accessibility and infrastructure in place. The second is really in terms of the design of the curriculum and the learning program. So the first point is having something that's stackable.
Yeah.
So a learner can start with almost zero knowledge, no prerequisites in a particular subject. Maybe they're a young person in secondary school, high school. They want to learn about a very basic, what is AI? AI for Everyone is one of our most popular courses from Dr. Andrew at Stanford. And then what is data science? What does this all mean? And that's where we start closing the digital literacy gap.
Right.
And this is what we're doing in the Amazon. We're starting at that level. And so that stackability of starting very, very easy on-ramp to education, getting them comfortable, is very key. Also the size. Maybe they're only doing a half an hour small project to begin with, just to taste and to get started, and then it builds upon that. The second piece of that second point is that it should be self-paced. Not everyone is able to start a class at 4 p.m. on Thursday, September 15th, and it has to be 5 hours a day. It has to be woven into their personal lives. So we see, for example, 50% of women on Coursera said that they would never be able to continue their learning had it not been self-paced and online. This is the reason they're able to fit it around their caring duties and personal life duties.
Yeah.
So I think that piece is important. The third is we use AI Coach. It's called Coursera Coach. It's basically your mentor and your partner in your learning journey that advises you on tips, what to study, what to do next. If you had a challenge in a particular course, which chapter to go back to. It will not help you cheat, but it will give you guidance in terms of what to do to improve your performance. We also do a lot of webinars. We use Zoom, of course. We have office hours. We have Facebook exclusive groups, Instagram Live. We use a lot of social media to build a community of online learners so they don't feel isolated, that they're engaged and connected. And the learning is fun. So people showcase their achievements, they show off. I did this really cool project here, this is what it looks like. So we create that enabling environment. And then the fourth point is the outcomes. What does this mean for people? They're not going to be necessarily motivated if there isn't an outcome for them. And so we work increasingly with our partners like SAP, AWS, Microsoft, and Google to place learners into job roles. So that they're certified, they have a track, but it actually leads to something, a gain in their salaries, improvement in their career, some concrete outcome. So I think those are the 4 key things that we see push learner engagement.
Those are 4 very compelling strategies. I think government leaders of ASEAN should consider this strategy moving forward. Thank you for sharing that, Chad. Dr. Loveness, may I get back to you? How do you collaborate with educational institutions, governments, and businesses to ensure a holistic approach to provide diverse skill set for new talents? Also, given the diversity of ASEAN region, could you advise us how should we form this skilling partnership ecosystem for MSMEs in ASEAN?
Thank you so much. So as I mentioned earlier, digital skilling per se is not only to be seen in social perspective, it's a business opportunity. It's a business opportunity, it's an area to create impact. And that's where every stakeholder group has to get interested. Now coming to your question on how do we partner? So there are 3-4 models that we follow. First obviously is the direct partnership with government. Example being with ASEAN Foundation here, we are working for many years now. We have 2 programs called ASEAN Data Science Explorer and ASEAN Social Enterprise Development Program. 70,000 youths, 3,000 educators have been trained on that. In India, we have a program called Code Unnati. Unnati is the Hindi word for progress. So Code Unnati, which is actually aiming to train 1.5 million people. There, the partnership is with the Indian government, including their innovation mission, wherein children in schools are being actually given the exposure on robotics, 3D printing and whatnot, and they are setting up labs in school called tinkering labs, and so we are actually partnering so that these children actually come up. So that's one model, wherein between government and individual companies, there is a partnership that we work. We introduced the courses in the Industrial Training Institute on data sciences, and we are running as an add-on course with them. Now, so that's one model. Second model is purely online model, like linking the the skilling platforms and portals already created by government agencies or government bodies like yours with the learning.sap.com that we have. So people using this route of the skilling platforms, and many universities, many students actually are a part of that, so they can go access these courses through that. We have already done that with the Delhi Skills University. We are looking at doing it with the likes of Digital Economy Promotion Agency in Thailand and other countries. That's the second model. The third model that is being used is the platforms created by industry bodies. Example being the SME Academy created on the US ASEAN Business Council platform. Now we just did this SME enablement at Semarang, before the ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting, 300 people. So they create this wherein it is specifically targeted at SME. So that's the third model. The fourth thing that we are doing in terms of enabling these partnerships is actually ensuring that the ecosystem is in place. Now, what does it mean? I can do anything and everything, but in the absence of capacity building of the government officials themselves on the technology, so now then comes the issue of I also need to create an ecosystem within government to ensure that people recognize, appreciate, and have the kind of view to what can be done, and then they decide. So we do these cloud sensitization workshops. We just did one in Philippines, one in Malaysia, getting governments on board as to what can they do using technology. And we did one now in India on what can we do. So that's the ecosystem creation part that we do. Having said so, I must add that currently these are company-specific efforts being done by every company. It's not that we are alone, but these efforts need to get integrated. That is one, so that there is a synergy, which we haven't done so far. To your point on SMEs, I think our experience shows that in addition to all these skilling, there is an added flavor that you need to add in SMEs. And that flavor is the peer learning, horizontal replication, and amplification of best practices. That is a major source for SMEs to actually get attracted towards digitalization and also towards, so what we did, for example, in India, where there are 63 million SMEs, we created this Growth Matters Forum. It's a community where SMEs can learn everything. Also, we created these Dare to Dream Awards, so people who were actually, so they were brought in a room like this, and everybody learns. So the peer learning and the peer exchange of knowledge and replication in SMEs was a very important ingredient that we learned as we started the traditional way of going and enabling on skilling. Now, after having come so far, I mean, at least I can say with surety that digital skills and given the contribution of SMEs to economy, the importance of skilling can actually make or break economies. Yeah, so that's where we are on the partnership.
Thank you for your valuable insights on the 4 models of partnership, and also your insight on how MSMEs can be used or can cooperate with other institutions to ensure that they learn from each other and they reap the benefit of digital transformation. I'm going back to you, Leonard. Would you mind to share your opinion on this issue? Accessibility is one of the key issues in providing education. In what ways can online meeting platform broaden the range of education program delivery even further?
Yeah, and I think Chad also touched on this slightly earlier. So as most of you know, I think before the COVID pandemic, most of us thought of learning mostly in the classroom. I mean, Coursera was already in existence, but most of us were quite rigid in our views of how education could be conducted. But I think the COVID pandemic overturned all those assumptions. Now we're very used to remote learning, hybrid learning, and I think platforms like Zoom play an important role in broadening access, as you call it. To Chad's point earlier as well, I think as we think about upskilling and reskilling, we should not forget vulnerable communities, whether it's women, mothers who are also juggling caregiving at home and work, communities which have poor internet access, or people who only have a handphone, mobile phone, no laptops. So a platform like Zoom manages to reach out to many of these different communities in the sense that it's simple, it works on my phone, it should work on your phone. It sort of is engineered such that the bandwidth and the usage of internet speeds is tailored to the user's own environment. So it's a very simple interface. What's good also is that Zoom offers, I think, several features that are accessible in terms of translation. So not many people know this, but I can be in a Zoom call, I can be speaking English. It can actually be translated into Bahasa or many other languages, Mandarin even. So it means that, say you could get someone teaching AI from, say, the US, Los Angeles, where Chad is from, and he could be a top professor in Stanford teaching the basics of AI to the people in Indonesia. So he's speaking in English, but it's translated into Bahasa Indonesia. So the locals can get access then to the top experts in the world in that particular skill. So things like these are, I think, very important in thinking about how we should upskill and reskill populations.
Thank you.
We use that feature even with our business meetings with government.
Right.
We use the Zoom multilingual feature. It's great.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. I agree with you that the platform should be simple and it should be able to transfer knowledge between different parts of the world. Is there anyone who hasn't yet used any of the company services from the speakers? For example, Coursera, Zoom, SAP, and Aruna? Anyone has never used the service? I think we all use, right? So this is very familiar to us, very close to our heart. So next to you, Ms. Utari, how can traditional business platform and expertise like traditional phishing can be integrated with digital tools, for example, data analytics and Internet of Things, to create a sustainable and profitable industry?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think for fishery industry specifically, we in Indonesia is one of the largest fisheries country in the world. We produce so many seafood. 70% of our island is consist by the sea. And maybe you never use Aruna, but maybe you ever try our seafood. Like we have tuna, lobsters, shrimp, squid, octopus, and so on. And we already distributed to most of them is North America as well as Southeast Asia, included Indonesia, some of restaurant and hotel chain as well. But where this seafood come from and how it works, how fishermen can produce the seafood and process it and it becomes the food that we eat, and how technology become enabler to that, it's what Aruna doing right now. So we are not the technology advantage like using the apps and help the fishermen to sell directly. We are not like that. We are creating the technology to enabler the whole business process. So then, for example, the fisherman is no longer confused to sell the product. Instead, we are there for them. We create the mini processing plant where we can do transaction directly with the fisherman, where fishermen also installed by the Internet of Things, such as the GPS tracker, analytics, integrating with several cloud-based company, and then we can track like the movement of the fishermen. After that, we can guarantee the traceability of our seafood. So this is something that become important for the customers. Right now, most of the customers that consume seafood, they're concerned about food safety, traceability, and so on. So that's how we offer in Aruna. We try to serve the fishermen not just educated to catch the fish, but they also can produce the seafood included with the sustainability as their mindset. And for the digital ecosystem, of course, for example, we're using the Zoom. So because our team is work all over Indonesia, we have 150 fishing village already joined with Aruna with 40,000 fishermen on board. And most of the time when we need to meet with the fishermen, we use several technologies as simple as Zoom to communicate with the fishermen, and we're using like the platform Coursera to upskilling our fishermen education. we're not teaching them to fishing because they're already expert for that, but we teach fishermen how to communicate, how to understand sustainable seafood, how AI can help them and their children to become more greatest fishermen in the future. So I think that's the digital can impact for the social community even in the future.
Wow, thank you. So digital can be enabler,
yes.
But we must collect data and use it as a way to iterate and to improve our business practice, like you said. Thank you. We are coming to the last two questions in this session. And this question is for all. I will hope that Chad can start on this question to answer these questions. The first one, how do you think we can best assist MSMEs in developing countries in bridging the skill gap and achieving digital transformation readiness? And what is your role, your company role in addressing this challenge?
I think the first point actually goes back to some of the points raised by my colleagues and Dr. Chinana as well. The policymakers are really critical to actually having significant scalable change. Yeah. And if the policymakers aren't aware of the latest technologies, the power of technology, and the solutions available out there, then I think it's a big handicap. And it's very, very hard to progress.
Yes.
So we've seen in countries where there's a lot of movement and innovation and development, it's that combination of policymakers being really skilled and understanding what's out there, plus the ability for supporters like donors, like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, MasterCard Foundation, many of these private sector donors, to be part of the narrative and discussion and to leverage that. We also see that partnerships with academics and universities are really critical, because that's essentially where the bulk of the trained population is heading. And if they're coming out into the job market without the right skills, or skills that are too far behind, it further exacerbates that gap.
Right.
So I think it's back to this idea of partnership and starting with key stakeholders and key sort of cohorts and core groups being trained in those particular areas, and then essentially connecting them all together. So I was in the APEC summit in Seattle a few weeks ago, and the whole discussion, we all gathered, it was government, private sector, academia, and we were basically trying to form alliances to see where we can support each other, where we can intervene. And it might be very small, short projects, pilot projects, very targeted groups like maybe fishermen, women in the Amazon, you know, young students in farms in Laos, for example, that we can actually intervene in these small projects and then create kind of a concentric wave around these partnerships. So I think that's, for me, the starting point, is really having those key groups being trained and developed.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think partnership is crucial, and you're also pointing out that policymakers should have enough understanding on what's going on right now so they can devise a good strategy. Thank you. Leonard, do you want to add on this?
Yeah, I think I'll reinforce actually Chad's point. So policymakers play a very important role, I think, working with companies like Coursera, like Zoom, like SAP, like Aruna. Firstly, policymakers, I think, need to have a good handle on the changing skills landscape. So what skills are in demand today are totally different from what skills are in demand last year, right? Secondly, I think policymakers or government officials have the best handle on which communities need help the most. And I'll give an example. The Malaysian Prime Minister's office actually approached us to work with them to upskill women entrepreneurs in Kelantan, in Malaysia. So Kelantan is actually one of the most or least developed in terms of ICT infrastructure in Malaysia. And these women entrepreneurs were either one woman or two women kind of outfits, making cakes, making baju, and they wanted to use Zoom to communicate either with their colleagues or their suppliers, or to just sell their goods. So we actually went to Kelantan and spent half a day teaching this maybe 10 women how to use software like Zoom, among other things. And also, I think they used e-payments, was also one of the things that they learned. So my point is policymakers play an important role because they can work with companies to identify specific groups, whether it's women, whether it's young people, whether it's single mothers, whether it's senior citizens, maybe. And then working together to upskill and reskill in particular skill sets.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those critical points that policymakers should know on how to assist MSMEs. Dr. Lovren, you already touched upon MSMEs in your previous explanation. Do you want to add on that?
Yes, so, I would like to reiterate, for SMEs, there are two broad areas. One is this whole area of awareness. When I talk about awareness, the challenge is to make SMEs aware about the technology solutions that are available, and in the process address that what's in it for me for SMEs. That to me, we have been trying carrots in a number of ways, but so long as we don't address that what's in it for me in terms of creating an awareness. Second, we also need to sensitize SMEs on the various pulls for digitalization. I'll give you an example. From ASEAN, many SMEs still export to EU. I mean, the EU continues to be, and the requirements around reporting on carbon emissions are very soon going to become a norm out of EU as we move forward, and you are aware that the EU. Now, if there is a pull in terms of reporting requirements that I can establish, that actually, I'm just giving one example. Yeah. There could be a number of other examples in terms of this thing. So that is one. Second, I think in addition to awareness, we also need to ensure the access to low-cost technology solutions. And to some extent, because unless that gets on ground, the implementation, good that we speak about SME learning, but it should result in the impact. And I think cloud-based offerings solve that issue, and to some extent like what we offer in terms of public cloud solutions where they can latch on, and the phasing of implementation. I think we need to address awareness and sensitization and access so that then it can go back. And one approach that we repeatedly see working is this whole cluster-based approach in SMEs. Like, so, an auto component cluster, all of them getting onto tech solutions and hence becoming, so that horizontal peer learning actually works. So always better that, a sectoral approach in terms of SMEs from a clusterization perspective is actually adopted. That's the experience, that's what the experience shows.
Thank you, Dr. Lovren, for bringing up that clusterization strategy, as well as saying that policymakers and MSMEs should figure out what's in it for them before they start this digital transformation journey and upskill and reskill their workers. Next, Utari, do you want to add on that?
I think to continue about the MSMEs, most of the challenges of the MSMEs, especially in the development countries, is about the scalability. Like most of us, when we find out there is a huge opportunity for scale up, most of the SMEs, they're afraid to scale up because of so many things. First, the capacity of the human. That's why we need to do digital learning. That's why we need to upscaling for the people that work in the MSMEs. The second, they cannot upscaling or make their company bigger is because they have lack of ability in terms of knowledge. For example, there is one MSMEs for seafood industry and they want to do export. They don't know how to do it, right. How to connect, what parties that can help. So I think this role can be held by the policymakers as well. And the third is about the upscaling problems is because they don't have any insight or maybe any working capitals. So that's why this role can be held by the bankers or maybe the investment companies and so on. So I think the gap to make the MSMEs not become small, not stay small, and to make them the bigger company is about help them and bring them outside the MSMEs category by help them to connect with the private sectors or maybe with the investment company or maybe with the policymakers and give them the education from the digital insight, because by using the digital learning in the MSMEs, it can help them to become more bigger like in the future. So I think that will help MSMEs a lot by using and implementing the digital access not just for the business, but as well as for the human that work in that MSMEs.
Thank you, Ms. Utari. I do agree that scalability is a main challenge for millions of MSMEs in ASEAN countries, and you have mentioned several ways to tackle this problem. This is the last questions for all of you distinguished panelists. I think I will start with Ms. Utari. First is, how can we ensure a lifelong learning and personal development are accessible to everyone across different regions and backgrounds, even for the underserved areas?
As Aruna working with most of the rural and coastal communities to ensure that they can get educated, we cannot just do it by the online activities. That's why we need to do it like both online and also offline approach. The second, the importance of the local community is very, very important, especially for the countries like Indonesia that have 70,000 islands. Right. We need to make sure that we have the local in Aruna, we call it local heroes. So we have the local heroes in each area that help us to educate the fishermen, to educate the coastal community, and so on. So I think having the local heroes in each countries or each village is very important. And the last is about choosing the right technology, because not everyone fit with every technology. For example, not all fishermen can use the Android. That's why maybe we need to create the technology that can be more fit with them, but not every children can use social media. So we need to create more advanced technology specific for the children. So I think customization is very important in terms of adapting the rural and coastal communities in the future. Yeah.
Thank you for pointing out that customization on rural communities and these underserved areas, yes, that is very crucial to make this happen. Dr. Lofness, do you want to add on this point?
You know, I'm not really concerned on lifelong learning.
Okay.
I'm really advocating lifelong unlearning, learning, and relearning.
Wow.
Because every time the change that happens,
yeah,
you need to more effort. You need to put more effort to make people unlearn the practice and then learn and relearn, rather than. And we have used, training as or skill building as a vehicle for learning.
Yeah.
And that has got stopped because of the unlearning not happening. In my view, either through a carrot or a stick in terms of job role change, this unlearning needs to be brought in, and then the learning and relearning. And that's where I say, from a culture of capacity building, while it may sound theoretical, we need to move to a culture of innovation wherein this becomes a continuous process and I'm left with no option but to unlearn, relearn. So that journey, once we complete, I think we can achieve what you suggested.
Wow, excellent points. To unlearn, learn, and relearn is very important today. Leonard, what is your take on this?
Your question is how to broaden access, right?
Right.
Yeah, so the short answer is use Zoom. On a more serious note, I think it's an important question, and I think the points made earlier about identifying particular communities, and here I think policymakers have an important role to work with companies to maybe provide incentives, whether it's tax credits, whether it's funds for training, whether it's setting aside time, compulsory time to train. Each country is different. In Singapore, the government gives a few $100s for every citizen to go for skills training. So I think policymakers and companies can work together to really identify these underserved communities well.
Thank you for emphasizing on those community strategy. I think it's very, very important and crucial.
I think particularly in Indonesia, I think also not just working with the national government, but also the regional and right down to the provincial and maybe village government even.
Yeah, we have so many district and regencies, so everyone must take part on these efforts. Last but not least, Chad, what is your view on how to create accessibility on lifelong learning and personal development? Yeah.
And I agree with my colleagues here. It's not going to just be one thing. It's just not going to be only online. It's not going to be only one area. And I think where we're seeing success is places like Laos, we have a program there supported by the World Bank, and it's blended learning. So essentially, it's across different communities. We're using their vocational training centers. The youth come together, and they have two types of mentors. One is like a lifelong career mentor that just gives them tips on life and what to look for jobs and what they can get. But it's a human being that they're talking to.
Right.
And this person is essentially their supporter. And will even write their application, endorse it when they apply for the scholarship to say, look, I will be with this person for the next year, 2 years, along their journey, supporting them. They're very motivated, and I will help them and be there with them. The second piece is the academic mentorship. So, you know, not everybody is able to learn in a certain way, whether it's online or through Coursera or other methodologies. So we have a human being sitting in villages, for example, in Kerala, in Laos, and they're working with the learner to actually guide them along. And they've already pre-done courses on Coursera and elsewhere, so they have the knowledge of, let's say, data science. But they then tell the local person as they're going along, what does data science mean to you? And if there are any blockers, they're there to help intervene. So I think this human connection is really important to localize, but also support the learner. And the second piece is really in terms of how people learn is very different in different contexts and different areas, and it's changing very rapidly, to Dr. Chinana's point. It's not going to be the same. The way even Coursera teaches online is probably what was being done in universities like for the last 20 years. You know, you have a lecture, you have a professor, you have a quiz. Maybe that's not how people are going to learn in the next 5, 10 years. As young people are coming up, they're looking at quick social media, you know, TikTok, Instagram, ways of actually getting information.
Right.
And we need to adapt to that, or at least to be able to anticipate how people are going to shift in terms of the way they acquire and retain information. So I think that's going to be really critical as well. We have to change the way we teach.
Wow. Thank you, Chad. It's a very enlightening explanation on lifelong learning and how we can change the way we live to be able to learn faster and better. This has been an insightful conversation, and I believe we all have much to ponder regarding upskilling and reskilling for digital transformation. A hearty thank you for all our distinguished panelists for your valuable contribution. As we move forward, let us keep this insight in our mind and work collaboratively to equip our communities with the skills that they need for the futures. This brings us to the end of this session. On behalf of the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum, I thank all of you guys here for your engagement, and please enjoy the rest of the forum, and may you carry with you the insight and knowledge gleaned from today's discussion. Thank you.
A round of applause to our incredible speakers and moderator for making this a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much. You may now return to your seats. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Our next session, moving forward, will now focus on the ASEAN Digital Economy Framework, or integration. And building on these insights, we are now ready to transition to our next agenda item, which is the briefer session. So with that, please join me in welcoming to the stage our esteemed briefer, the head of Digital Economy Division, Market Integration Directorate of the ASEAN Secretariat, Mr. Sivaram Subramanian.
Thank you. A very good morning. Let me just quickly introduce myself. Has been introduced as well. My name is Sivaram Subramanian. In short, you can call me Ram. I'm the head of Digital Economy Division at the ASEAN Secretariat. Now, I've been strictly told that I need to keep within my time for 3 minutes. Right, so without further ado, let me just go straight to my presentation. I'll be presenting on ASEAN Digital Economy Framework, or the initiatives that we have within the ASEAN. So before I start, to begin with, we all know the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the digital transformation globally, and even so for ASEAN. So if you look at the bar chart on my right, before the pandemic, ASEAN had new users of 100 million for a period of 5 years. And this period, we are talking from 2015 to 2019. Now, probably one of the benefits of pandemic is, because of the pandemic, within a period of 3 years, which is from 2020 to 2022, we already hit the 100 million new internet users. Now, what is more exciting is, with a population of 600 over million of ASEAN, 460 million are internet users. And 80% of these 460 million, they are digital consumers who are those who are involved in some form of digital transformation in the internet. So with that, the leaders got together in 2021 and they actually adopted a document called Bandar Sri Begawan Roadmap. What does this document do? Is actually prioritize the initiatives or the focus that ASEAN need to have, right, in order to further accelerate the digital transformation in ASEAN. So what you see on the screen is non-exhaustive. I selected some of it, right? And this also will be covered in the Digital Economy Framework Agreement. So let me just quickly run through some of these initiatives. So on my far right, the first initiative is digital trade. Now this is something buzzword. Everyone has been using ever since pandemic digital trade, but nobody has a single definition for it, right? For ASEAN, what is important digital trade means is the exchange of electronic documents. We have successfully exchanged electronic document for customs, right? We have exchanged the Atika E-Form D or Certificate of Origin. We have also exchanged the custom declaration document. Moving forward, we are exchanging the agriculture-related documents. Now, we all know private sector play an important role when it comes to digital trade, which is cross-border trade. And this is where one of the areas that we'll be embarking is the types of documents that need to be exchanged when it comes to private sector. So this could be at the financial, this could be logistic, this could be shipping, and so forth. This is something that we need to further deep dive, and we'll be engaging with the private sector. Number two is on digital standards. Let me just be clear, ASEAN, we have no intention to create our own standards. What we really want is to adopt international standards which allows two things. One is standardization, and number two, as the ambassador from India has mentioned, interoperability. I think these are the two things that we are looking at. There is a committee that looks into digital standards. They actually develop standards in a wide area, which includes cybersecurity, digital payment, and so forth. Number three is digital payment, right? As of 2021, I think one of the panel speakers mentioned about QR code. In 2021, we already start implementing the real-time retail payment systems, right? So this, if you are from Indonesia and you have CIMB app, right, CIMB Naga app, you are able to go to Bangkok or Singapore or any of the countries in ASEAN member states and able to do a transaction regardless you're in a restaurant or you're at retail outlets, right? So no more cash, and you don't have to exchange your currency, you just have to tap. So at this point of time, many of these transactions are done bilaterally, one-to-one between the ASEAN member states. What are we embarking or we are looking at is bilateral, where we can go into many to many. And this has not been done in any part of the world, even in Europe. Right? So we are looking into technologies, the Nexus, Modulo, and so on, and how do we do this? Number four is digital ID. Again, here digital ID, we are looking at interoperable digital ID. Because ASEAN is not interested just to connect among the 10 ASEAN member states. We want to connect to the world. We want to connect to the India. We want to connect to the UK, US, Japan, Korea, and so forth. So we have embarked into two main initiatives. Digitalization of your personal ID, meaning that if I'm a Malaysian, I would be able to do transaction with the Singapore government with my digital ID. But what is really important that we are looking is the business ID, right? So what we have done a study, which we call it as UBIN, which has been endorsed by the ASEAN economic ministers in August. That is phase one. Phase two, we are looking at the use cases where we can go embark into the implementation of business ID. Now, number five is on cybersecurity and data protection. We have a team called CERT, Computer Emergency Response Team. What is CERT means? This is where all the cybersecurity experts within the 10 countries come together and work together on do two things. When there's an incident happen, especially with your critical national infrastructure, how do we come together and respond to the incident? Number two, when it comes to cybersecurity, it's really important to exchange knowledge. Some nations are more advanced, some need to be educated. So how do we come together and exchange knowledge, exchange experiences, and how do we train each other in the area of cybersecurity? When it comes to data protection, which is one of the key areas, we do have guidelines that's been developed. We have the ASEAN Digital Management Framework, which provides a detailed guideline on how organizations can protect their data. The second is the model contractual clauses. This is where, when a data is cross-border from one AMS to another AMS, how should the data be protected? At this point of time, we are also working with the EU, right? EU, as we have MCC, EU also has their SCC. So we are looking at the guidelines on how data can be protected when it's cross-border between ASEAN and to the EU. Now, last but not least, I think the previous panel spoke a lot about digital skills and talent, upskilling and reskilling, and this is really important because ASEAN, most of our industries, 97 to 99% our industries are MSMEs, right? So what do? We can't work policy, we can only make policies, but what we do is we work very closely with the private sector in order to do two things. Number one, to create content and to learn, right? To give training. Right? And this is where the content and the learning is done in the native language. Because most MSMEs, right, digitalization is not something difficult. But because of the language, they find it is quite difficult. Right? So therefore, creating content and doing the development and training in their native language is very important to accelerate the adoption of digitalization. Number two is we need to change the mindset of the business owners. Now, previous speaker has spoke about relearning, learning, and unlearning, learning, and relearning. This is really important for the business owners, right? The mindset has to change. As you develop, you need to unlearn, you need to learn and relearn new technologies, new way of doing business, and so on. So this is where we have ASEAN SME Academy, where the private sector will come in and provide the content and training. We also have the Go Digital ASEAN, which focus on the rural area. So there's many initiatives we've been doing for the last 2 to 3 years, right? But unfortunately, we have developed a lot of framework, we have developed a lot of guidelines, but unfortunately, these are volunteers, right? So what happens? The adoption of this guideline, which has been won award, has been very low. So this is where the Digital Economy Framework Agreement comes in, right? Whereby we are going to legally bind some of these guidelines, some of the framework, which will further accelerate the digital transformation in ASEAN. Now, this is my last slide. I've already exceeded my 3 minutes. Now, so what is exciting, I think the ambassador from India has also said about the Digital Economy Framework Agreement. Now, before we start the study, right, Boston Consulting was a consultant for this study, and we told them that what economic benefits can we gain from going into a DEFA agreement, right? So this is the chart that you can see that came out from the Boston Consulting. As we speak now, right, the digital economy for ASEAN is worth 300 to 400 billion based on last year or this year, right? Now, if you don't do anything, business as usual, the organic growth is going to be 1 trillion. We are going to be a $1 trillion digital economy, right? But what is beauty about us, DEFA, the moment you have a digital-only agreement which talks about interoperability, which talks about an open system where we can connect to the world, not only within the ASEAN, right? We talk about the legal framework. We are talking about UNICITRA model law, which is a game changer, which is going to change a lot of things, which private sector is able to spur in their, involvement in digital economy. So by having DEFA, a forward-looking DEFA, this is where we think that we can double the digital economy value from $1 trillion to $2 trillion. As much as we are excited, we are also going into negotiation, and we really hope that we will negotiate a forward-looking DEFA, and this is where, during the process, we will be engaging with private sector people like you and Joint Business Council to get the feedback from the ground. I guess that's it, right? It's 5 minutes. I'll be here. Feel free to come over to me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to assist you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for our esteemed briefer for sharing your knowledge and insight with us today. And again, let's extend our heartfelt appreciation to Mr. Sivaram Subramanian with another warm of applause, ladies and gentlemen. So moving on today for our next agenda, the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum with the theme of implementation of the ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific. Again, this forum aims to unlock further opportunities and also build stronger connectivity between ASEAN countries and the Indo-Pacific. And this will serve as an inclusive platform for ASEAN member states and partners, mainly from the public and also the private sectors, to engage in constructive discussions, identify potential tangible projects, and also promote collaboration in the Indo-Pacific. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, throughout the day, we've had the privilege of hearing from distinguished experts, thought leaders who have shared their knowledge, their experiences, and also perspectives on a wide range of topics. The depth of insights and the quality of the discussions have been truly exceptional. And now we have come to the final panel session of today's event, which will focus on the connectivity plans in Asia and beyond. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the stage our moderator and our esteemed speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, the lead advisor, Southeast Asia Region Economic Research Institute for ASEAN, Ms. Lily Yan Ing. And also, let me allow to invite our speakers today, Mr. Muhammad Fajrin Rashid, Director for Digital Business of Telkom, Mr. Anand Stanley, President of Airbus Asia Pacific. We also would like to invite Ms. Michaela Browning, Vice President of Government Affairs and Public Policy of Google Asia Pacific, and also Mr. Rene Peel Pedersen, Managing Director of AP Moller Singapore PTE Ltd. So, to the moderator and to our esteemed speakers, the stage is yours.
Thank you. I know it's 11. Does the speak work? Okay, thank you. I know it's 11:30, it's time to have lunch. If I were the speaker, I could help you to feel very full because of my boring speech. But now we are very unfortunate that we have a very good list of speakers that keep you awake and makes you getting more hungry. So let me start with the first questions to all speakers. We are very blessed to have these excellent speakers today. Let me start with, for your businesses, what are the biggest challenges and opportunities in bridging connectivity in ASEAN? You can start with Pak Fajrin.
Right. Thank you very much. So, just to introduce our company, Telkom Indonesia is the biggest telco company in Indonesia. We also present in 11 other countries outside Indonesia. And I believe that there are a lot of challenges when we talk about connectivity, in our case, network and internet connectivity. First of all, across many countries in Indo-Pacific, the situation is different between or amongst each countries, right? So there are challenges in terms of the remote areas. Indonesia, Philippines, for example, are two of the largest archipelago countries in the world. So there are challenges in terms of the physical infrastructure. The second challenges are regarding the talent or expertise needed to develop and manage this infrastructure, right? Because new technologies are coming. We have to keep adapting to this new technology. And for that, we also need best class or top class engineers to manage these infrastructures. The third is about difference of standards, right? So there are a lot of different standards when we talk about the network connectivity. So we have to talk with each of the parties related with the connectivity and also how we can improve and work together. So to address that connectivity, we in Telkom Indonesia have some initiatives. The first is regarding the connectivity itself. So we have covered, I think, around 500 cities across Indonesia and have reached more than 99% of Indonesian population. We want to go to as far as possible, right? We want to achieve 100%, but we also need to work together with some parties, including the government. We talk with the government, especially Ministry of ICT, to address those in the very remote areas. The second thing is also to provide the talent needed, because connectivity without the talent is also useless. People cannot use the potential of this digital economy if they cannot or does not have the ability to do so. We also work together with some parties to provide training to SMEs. We also work together with Google Indonesia in some of this training, because we also believe that the one that is benefiting from this connectivity is not just individual, but also SMEs. The previous speaker mentioned about the potential of digital economy. We also agree with that. And the potential of this digital economy can only be accessed if we enable the SMEs to be able to provide the skills necessary to be able for them to use the digital economy, right? For example, SMEs sales will be enlarged, will be increased further if they can use or they can sell in e-commerce platforms. So those are some examples. The third is services that that can be used in the connectivity. So for example, during the pandemic, we worked together with the government of Indonesia to create this application called Peduli Lindungi, which is a one-stop solution for track and trace COVID-19 situations. So if you are in Indonesia, if you go to Indonesia, you're probably familiar with this application, where every time you do a COVID-19 testing, or you do a vaccine, then your data will be automatically uploaded in these applications. So that's how the example of application or services that can be used on top of this connectivity to provide a specific services that is beneficial for the country and also for the citizens.
Okay, thank you, Fajrin. Now to Adnan, what kind of strategies that your company implement to improve this kind of connectivity gaps in ASEAN?
Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me. Again, Bapak dan Ibu undangan yang kami hormati, selamat pagi. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm the president for Airbus Asia Pacific and also a member of the EU ASEAN Business Council Board. When we look at connectivity and our strategies, what's important to note is more than 2/3 of the world's population live around Indonesia, the ASEAN, when we combine India and China. And Indonesia is the core pillar of ASEAN. When we look at the three emerging superpowers, India, China, and Indonesia, the connectivity of the region is not possible by railways or road alone. The true connectivity has to come through aviation. And the fastest growth of aviation is happening in this region. And some of the fastest growth in the world we look at is in Indonesia. And we are looking at, in the entire region, over 17,000 new aircraft to come in to be able to drive connectivity growth. Why is that important? It is important because this enables freedom of movement of the people from island to island, from country to country, to connect within the region. And this freedom of movement creates economic opportunity. We look at aviation driving almost 1/3 of the GDP growth when you look at the domino effect. And this in turn drives educational opportunities, better health care, longer life expectancy, and most of all, tremendous amount of economic opportunity. So for us, we as Airbus, our strategy is really the human capital development that we can provide
through this connectivity in this region, starting with Indonesia.
Thank you. That's a very important point on the aviation's connectivities. Now coming to Michaela Browning. How about in terms of digital connectivities? Google as one of the main players in Asia Pacific, what does or has been done by Google to improve this kind of digital connectivity in the regions? Or what is the strategy of Google?
Well, selamat pagi and terima kasih to our very generous Indonesian hosts for their successful ASEAN summit. Thank you for the question. And thank you for the comments by our colleagues, including Google's fantastic partner, Telecom Indonesia, who we're working with on our Google Career Certificates exactly to contribute to the skilling that we need for digital transformation. Can I perhaps just say a couple of things, because the question is huge. Let me just talk about what we need, not just as Google, but for the region in terms of promoting digital connectivity. And the first thing I would mention is being intentional. Google as a company has a mission statement which embeds connectivity and inclusiveness at its very core. It's in our DNA and it drives all of our business decisions. Our mission statement is to organize the world's information and to make it universally accessible and useful. That means that in everything we do, we think about how to reach new internet users. For example, there's 100 million new internet users in ASEAN, but there's also millions of incredibly digitally savvy users already in ASEAN, and we need to think about how we connect with both those groups. So we think about it at our very core. And so that's just one company thinking very intentionally about connectivity. We really are encouraged to hear leaders coming together at ASEAN to talk about how ASEAN leaders can be intentional about digital transformation and inclusion. And so the announcement of negotiations for a digital economic framework agreement is really substantial in that regard. It shows a collective commitment to digital transformation, connectivity, and inclusion. So I think that intention is important. The second thing, which Fajrin mentioned, is skilling. I mean, obviously we need infrastructure, we need the rules of the road, we need products and services, but we also need to be building the skills and the digital literacy for the digital economy we have now and for the digital economy we have in the future, particularly with AI. And so skilling is an evergreen responsibility. We have been working with our partners to train more than 60 million people across the region in the last few years in basic digital skills, but we're also doing things, as with Telkom Indonesia, Google Career Certificates, which are deeper, very specific skills that people will need for new and emerging technologies in cloud, in artificial intelligence. So that's just two of the things that I think that we need. Thank you.
You raised a very important issues on AI. Let's get back with you on that point later on. Before that, Renee, you know, like 80% of global trade is happening in the maritime. What is the strategy of Maersk to improve physical connectivity, particularly logistics, ports in ASEAN? What are the challenges that you have been facing? What are the strategy to improve the connectivity?
Thank you for the question, and thank you to our hosts, the Indonesian government. It's really a pleasure to be back here in Jakarta. Improving life for all by integrating the world. That is our mission. That is our vision. That is what my company is aiming to do and what we have tried to do for more than 100 years. We work, as Lily mentioned, very much in the physical space, but also in the digital space. And what we do is that we create effective and resilient supply chains that caters for trade, and trade that will create opportunities for people and for companies of different sizes. So this is our starting point. The way we work with it is mainly to invest in infrastructure. It can be different sorts of infrastructure. Of course, we are best known for our container vessels, and there we have invested a lot over many years. We have 700 container vessels sailing around the world, not at least in our part of the world. But where we see challenges is probably less on the water, but more on the waterfront and the land side. If we look at the logistics performance index that are made by World Bank, we can see that Asia and the Southeast Asian countries, the ASEAN countries, are hovering around a level 3.2, 3.3 on a scale from 1 to 5, where 5 is the best. The outlier is, of course, Singapore being at 4.3. But if you go to Europe, we are actually also above 4. We need to close that gap, because what this gap represents is basically opportunity. This is logistics cost as a part of our GDP in this region, and it's also cost to the buyers and sellers of goods and products in this region. So what we are doing is that we are investing in logistics on the land side. This is port terminals. It's mainly container terminals. It's also in warehouses, logistics hubs. It's trucking. All of these ingredients. But coming back to your question, what is the opportunity? What is the challenge? I think one big opportunity is that we and the regulators and our politicians need to think in supply chains rather than think in the individual components of the supply chains. Often what gets attention is a big new road or a big new port. But for the people who buy transport and logistics, it's the end-to-end solution. And to the end-to-end solution, just to give you an example, in a few countries up north, we actually have a great railway in both countries. We also have great highways in both countries. If we are moving a container from one country to another and don't put it on a ship, we will move it first by rail to the border. We will take off the container, put it on a truck, because it needs to be in a truck when it crosses the border, and then we'll put it on rail again. So we have a great railway, we have great trucking, we have great railway again, but the end-to-end solution is far from perfect. It's not effective. And then we could add the custom procedures. There need to be a lot more harmonization in the custom procedures, and to move into the digital space, we also need to entertain to a larger extent the use of electronic bill of ladings. A lot of the paper flow could and should be going in a digital form rather in paper form. So this is really where I see one of the gaps, or a main gap. It's the thinking around logistics and transport. Think in supply chains rather than think in the individual components. Thank you.
That's a very good highlight that I'll come back to you later on. If I may come back to Fajrin's, in the beginning you mentioned about engineering standards talents. In terms of standards in digital connectivity, what are the main issues that telecom or any other services provider finds in terms of harmonizing standard in digital connectivity?
So I believe that collaboration is the key, right? To achieve the universal connectivity, we need to work together with parties related with this area. One of the examples that we participated in recently was the B20 Summit event that was conducted in India last week. In B20, there are few task forces, and we participated as a co-chair in one of the task forces, namely Digital Transformation Task Forces. So this task force came up with recommendation that is agreed by the member of the task forces, which is a business leaders from global business companies, which then submitted to the G20 summit leaders by the end of this September. In Digital Transformation Task Force, there are 4 recommendations that we have agreed on. One is to provide universal connectivity. The second is to provide or improve digital literacy and digital skills needed. And the third is about digital transformation for MSMEs in terms of the financing, in terms of the standards, in terms of the other aspects necessary for them to be able to succeed. And the fourth is to provide or have some standards regarding digital trust. So these 4 recommendations are the one that we have agreed on in this B20 summit. And the similar example, I believe, can also be applied in the Pacific area, where business leaders in these countries may provide with some recommendation that can be submitted to the leaders of these countries in this area. Because some challenges in some areas might be different. As mentioned before, the archipelago countries have probably different challenges than those in one area country. So I believe that the similar standards or the similar approach can also be applied here, where we in Telkom Indonesia will be happy to participate in as well.
Okay, so you suggest that ASEAN does not necessarily come up with a new standard. ASEAN can be just adopting the best practices in international standard.
Well, we have to talk first, right? So that's the talk that we have to participate in as well. The solution or the outcome from that talk or discussions can be to come up with one standard, or can be to apply with others. Now we haven't discussed, so we have not yet known what the best situation or the best answer for this region yet.
Okay, that's a very good suggestion. Let's discuss what will be the best for ASEAN in terms of adopting standards. Now coming to Anand, I think like you mentioned that aviation contributes about 1/3 of GDP, but there are also many concerns about the carbon dioxide emissions of aviation. What does in particular is that your company has, the Airbus or other aviation companies, has been doing in terms of to ensure mitigating or eliminating or reducing this kind of carbon dioxide emissions?
Thank you for that question. For Airbus, sustainable aviation is a core of our strategy. We obviously are interested in connecting the world more and more. We are looking at creating more modern aircraft that can connect ASEAN and Indonesia to the rest of the world, while making aircraft more efficient. If you look at the first Airbus when it came 50 years ago to the Airbus that is flying today, the carbon emissions per seat, per passenger seat, have gone down 80% per seat. And when you look at the aircraft we have today that we are using, the modern aircraft that Airbus is launching is between 25 to 40% lower emissions per aircraft than the previous generation that was there 10 or 15 years ago. So we are making huge step changes in technology to rapidly decrease emissions. But we know that that's not enough. What we are doing next is to make sure our aircraft are certified for sustainable aviation fuel. Today, every aircraft can use up to 50% sustainable aviation fuel on the aircraft. And by 2030, we will be 100% certified to use sustainable aviation fuel on all our aircraft. And just to let you know, sustainable aviation fuel reduces emissions in its life cycle by 80%. 80%. So we have a lot of good news coming on and a lot of efforts going on. But last but not least, by 2035, we have committed as Airbus to launch a zero-emission aircraft which will be fueled by hydrogen. And so these are all the initiatives we are looking at to take our industry to net zero.
Okay. That's a very good point that Airbus has been doing, and hopefully the target will be achieved. Target is not just the target, yeah? We should put efforts to achieve the targets. It's the same questions on sustainability. You know, like many of ASEAN countries are coal-based electricities, and running with data requires a lot of electricity power, right? What would be Google's strategy, reduce carbon dioxide emissions, as well as what do you think ASEAN's government has been done, and what should they do to be able to ensure that this data managing will not going to contribute to more carbon dioxide emissions?
Another huge question, Lily, but let me tackle part of it. Firstly, Google has been carbon neutral since 2007, matching renewable energy with 50-50 renewable energy to be carbon neutral since that time. And we've committed to our moonshot goal to be carbon zero by 2030 across all of our operations and supply chain. And one of the things, as I was reflecting on Airbus, is that we can be an extraordinary partner, I think, through the most efficient cloud in the world to help our partners, be they corporate or government, to achieve their climate change emissions goals. And indeed, these are not goals that we're going to achieve by ourselves. So Google has set an extremely ambitious goal. And for us to do that, we need to be partnering with our clients, with governments and others to achieve that goal that we've set for ourselves. You mentioned earlier AI, including AI enablement through our cloud data centers and subsea cable network investments is going to help us achieve our sustainability goals and help our customers achieve their sustainability goals more effectively and faster, and we're very optimistic about that. If I come to AI more generally and think about the importance of infrastructure investment, Google is one of the biggest infrastructure network investors in the world, and indeed in this part of the world we've invested over $2 billion in recent years. We've got 12 subsea cable investments across this region, and we've got 2 cloud regions and 7 cloud zones. And one of the key areas that we're focused on in up-leveling the infrastructure is for us and our partners, including all of our ASEAN partners, to meet our sustainability goals. The importance of up-leveling that infrastructure for sustainability. But it's not just sustainability, it's also for security and cyber security, and it's also to realise the productivity and economic growth opportunities. And so we're really excited about the potential for AI to help across all of those fronts, but it does require that partnership, that commitment together, and standards and interoperability and the policy settings that enable us to achieve it. We were hearing from the last speaker before this panel session about the opportunity being $1 trillion of digital economy by 2030. And that is not guaranteed if we do not have the right policy frameworks, the standards, the commitments to interoperability and to working together to realise that opportunity. Not just the 1 trillion, but certainly the 2 trillion as well.
Okay, that's a very good point. Renee, if we may flip a bit on the US-China trade tensions, you know, many officials, businesses, they see opportunities in ASEAN from investments relocations as well as trade relocations from China to ASEAN countries. But the thing is that many businesses quite concerns on the customs clearance process in ASEAN. How does Maersk see this customs clearance process in ASEAN? You can be very honest to us.
Yeah, of course. we can definitely see a trend to confirm what you see, that what you say, that a lot of FDI is being poured into Southeast Asia because of strategies that are sometimes called China +1 or 2 or 3. Let me just stress, you cannot replace China overnight. But there's no doubt what we see among international or MNCs just now is that a lot of the new investments are going into countries like in the ASEAN countries, also India, and there's also other geographies that are enjoying FDI in this context. A concern for most of these investors is it starts with the effectiveness of the logistics sector. What we talked about a few minutes ago. How effective is my supply chain? How resilient is my supply chain? That is question number one. Then there's questions about cost, and as part of cost is also, you could say that's also the efficiency part. How much effort, time do you have to spend on customs and similar things? That is a big issue as well. We actually offer custom house brokerage to our customers. So for me, it's actually a business opportunity because we manage this on behalf of many of our customers to make sure that their customs declarations are correct, etc. But it's not perfect. It's not perfect. And what we need and what I think is the opportunity for ASEAN is at least to align to a greater extent procedures and rules and regulations around customs in this region. And perhaps try to avoid a zero-sum game mindset where you are competing with other Southeast Asian countries, but instead see this as an opportunity for this region. And there's no doubt it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity, and it is a concern for international investors.
Right. I mean, what we learn is that Chinese governments, they put a lot of efforts to reduce this kind of transactional costs, particularly in customs clearance, in making the logistics very efficient from productions to ports. How do you see ASEAN's government is doing, and what specific strategy that Marsk trying to do to provide solutions for ASEAN?
Yeah. What we do is mainly to do pilot projects with different governments. An example is electronic bill of ladings and customs handling of electronic bill of ladings. Just 2 weeks ago, we made quite a big test together with the Singapore government and the Indian government or the customs authorities in both these countries, where we did everything electronically. What we are, rather than just go and knock at doors and say we want digital solutions, we try to showcase that it actually works. It's safe, and it's also safe in respect of the concerns that custom authorities and governments have. And by showcasing that, we hope that we can drive a development. But I think with the danger of repeating myself, I think what is a big opportunity for ASEAN is that rather than we doing Singapore, India, Vietnam, US, etc., we should do something as ASEAN. This is the opportunity, that ASEAN sits together and agree on how can we align our regulation. And it doesn't have to be 10 similar blueprints or a system like we see in Europe, where we basically have one custom code for an entire region. Of course, that would be a perfect end game, but we can take some steps in that direction. And that will be a huge opportunity for this region.
I should admit that speakers are very genius and time efficient. So we still have time, and we would like to have more insights from audience. Can you please be very brief? Raise your hands, name and institutions, and you can come up with your questions. I'll give a chance for 2 questions, please. Any questions from the audience? Okay, well, you can think what questions that you're going to ask. While you're thinking, let me, oh, please.
Yeah, it's not for me to ask questions.
You have a question to audience?
If I may, while the audience is thinking about some interesting questions, you touched upon sustainability, you touched upon decarbonization, and I think Anand and I are sharing the same challenges. I'm in shipping, I'm in land transport, I'm in air cargo, and for my air cargo I expect that Anand will solve my problems, but for the shipping part and for the land side, it's something I have to solve myself. Mm-hmm. And in our company, I just wanted to share that we have an ambition to be zero carbon across our businesses by 2040. It's actually 15, 20 years earlier than what international regulation prescribes at present moment. We do this because we think it's the right thing to do. We also do it because we want to serve our customers. And our customers expect this from us. And actually, some solutions are already there. As we speak, we have the first ever built green methanol-fueled container vessels sailing from Asia to Europe. It will be named in the port of Copenhagen next week. And with this vessel, we will be able to carry out sea transport where we reduce the CO2 emissions when we look at a cradle-to-grave perspective, not only the actual sailing, but also the production of fuel, etc., where we can bring down emissions, carbon emissions, with 90 to 95%. So a lot is happening in this space. I also think when we look at EV trucking, there's a lot of opportunities. And here we also need to look in our region. In a number of countries in the region, we are challenged by pollution, air quality, etc. The solution is, or at least at this stage, the solution is to go electric. And we can actually do that even with trucks, even when transporting containers. Early next year, we will start a pilot in Vietnam with 12 EV trucks transporting containers. So it is possible. So I just want to highlight that is also an agenda that are very important to us.
Okay. Now let's come up with the recent developments of AI and how much companies have been optimize the use of robots and AI, and how will that gonna affect employment in the regions? Fajrins, you can probably start. How much telecom has optimized the use of robots and AI, and what do you think it's gonna affect the overall story of telecommunications in ASEAN?
Yeah. So AI in telco company has been used in many years, mainly in terms of efficiency of network planning. Right, because we do a lot of capex on developing the infrastructure needed for our services. So AI is used mainly there, as well as in business operations. I guess the business operations part is the same to other industries as well. The second big part of AI is to enhance our existing services to the client. So for example, through chatbot, through faster customer service, and so on. So these are also the areas that we are developing in the last 1 or 2 years. We believe that through AI, we can provide enhanced services to the customers. The next big thing about AI is also to provide a big data analytics tools to the clients, especially business and governments, right? As the company becomes more and more digitalized, usually they will be having more and more data, much more data than before, and the use of AI is how to make the data make sense to the executives or the decision makers of the companies or governments.
That's a very nice punchlines on the optimizing the use of AIs. But how it's going to affect on the aviation industries, Anand?
So Airbus is a technology company. We're an innovation company. And if you look at most of our products, like our aircraft or satellites, they're fairly independent, automated beings. You know, the amount of time really a pilot flies an aircraft is very little. And our satellites are completely independent on their own way. The automation is heavily dependent on machine learning and areas like that. But what's key for us in these areas of science is how do we apply this more and more to being more efficient. We use it a lot in air traffic management, where we are making our aircraft more and more efficient to how they manage air traffic control and air traffic management. You'd say, why does that matter? Because more efficient, intelligent aircraft can again save 5 to 10% of fuel burn and carbon emissions. And that's something that's very, very important. Another area we use a lot of technology is just in the design of new aircraft, which are again more and more capable with the newer materials and more recyclable, the circularity that goes into the design of these aircraft. But last, and not the least, is how do we use these technologies for truly sustainable solutions that we talk about? And that is the most important reason for innovation that we look at. When we look at a lot of our satellites, how do they observe climate change in a very different way from what technologies on the ground can ever look at? How do we be a part of a solution in terms of decarbonization from country to country? What kind of innovation and technologies can we look at? And last but not least, what's so evident when each of us are talking across here on the panel, and I love what Renee just said, is that these technologies, these sustainability solutions, do not really matter when we look at it from a sector-wise outlook. What is important is this kind of innovation, whether it's AI, decarbonization solutions, are not aviation specific, but transport specific, are not just transport specific, but include the Googles of the world, the telecom sectors of the world. We include policymakers, we include regulation, and we include educational institutions. Otherwise, technology and innovation will lose sight that it is a force for good for humanity.
Yes, that's very nice wisdom of today. Michaela, you know, like the godfather of Google, a godfather of AI from Google decided to resign, and he has warned us about the negative impacts of the misuse of AI. What will Google contribute to managing or mitigating the negative risk of the misuse of AI?
Well, thank you. It's an important question. And firstly, Google is an AI-first company. And since 2018, we've had our AI principles, which we established and which we report against every year, and which have gone on to be enormously important in shaping the ideas of many policymakers, including the OECD and others, about the ethical and responsible development of AI. Our principles include 7 things that we will do and 4 things that we won't do in terms of how we develop AI responsibly. But we are enormously excited by the opportunity and the benefits that AI can build to. So we feel like we also have a very big responsibility to develop AI and to bring some of those benefits to the world. And indeed, AI has been with us for a long time. In fact, all of you using a mobile phone at the moment are benefiting from AI in terms of using things like Google Maps or Google Translate, the machine learning that goes into thinking about the trust and safety of what you see on the internet, a lot of which is powered by AI algorithms that help us with things like content moderation. And indeed, AI for sustainability is enormously important. So just thinking on your last point, AI is helping us make our data centers and Google Cloud 10 times more efficient in terms of delivering on sustainability. It's helping deliver insights for our clients to be more efficient in their businesses. And Renee, we can certainly help you achieve your sustainability goals. But importantly, it's also contributing to things like flood forecasting, environmental insights on pollution, which you mentioned earlier, that help all of us in our everyday lives understand and respond to some of the sustainability challenges that we're seeing. So we know AI can be an enormous force for good in terms of tackling climate change, in terms of science and technology development, but we also know it's an emerging technology that we need to develop responsibly. And so the way in which we think about it is that we want to be bold in developing AI in ways that bring the benefits that we want. We want to be responsible, working with all the stakeholders to have the right guardrails and principles in place to develop AI responsibly. And we know that we need to do that together. So this isn't just something that Google does. This isn't just something that Airbus does or that governments decide on or that civil society decides on. Everybody needs to be a stakeholder in that process. And bring us right back to the first question that you mentioned about inclusion, I think we need to be especially mindful about the digital transformation journey for ASEAN and thinking about our responsibilities to develop AI in a way that is inclusive and that thinks about the many millions of people across our region and their different stages of development in that digital transformation journey and our responsibility to help them realise, to understand and realise the potential of AI as part of that.
Renee, since you had addressed on the sustainability issue, and then we have very short time left, so let's give 1 or 2 sentences for each panelist to give a concluding remark. Starting from Fajrin.
Well, I think if I can summarize in one word, is collaboration. Let's not focus on the current pie because digital economy, especially in ASEAN, will grow 6-8 times in the next few years. Let's focus on how to enlarge the pie together.
Please, Anand.
ASEAN and Indonesia are a key driver of our future, and it's a bright spot for us to look at. But connectivity and sustainability have to start here to really look at a decarbonized planet while maintaining human capital and growth for humanity.
Great, please.
And I am so excited to be at the ASEAN Summit where the Indonesian President and ASEAN leaders have announced a commitment to negotiate a digital economic framework agreement. I think that this is a commitment to try and build that policy framework which is foundational for everything that we're talking about, the standards and the interoperability, and for us to realise that digital transformation in a way that is sustainable, that it is inclusive, that supports economic growth, and is mindful of the many millions of people across the region at different stages in their digital transformation journey.
Great. Please, Renee.
Thank you. And I think a lot of great words has been said already by my colleague panelists. I think what I will encourage ASEAN is to be courageous. With the developments in the rest of the world, the opportunities for ASEAN is bigger than it has been for a long time. Let's stay open. Let's be progressive. Let's have all the things mentioned in our mind, that we drive growth, we drive the development while we are sustainable at the same time and inclusive. I think we have a great opportunity as ASEAN, and I think the opportunity is bigger than it has been for a long while. Thank you.
Great. So it's very great to hear kind of positive message conveyed by our panelists today. And we hope that ASEAN keep its balance, keep its positive engagements with all trading and investments partners, and put a lot of efforts to improve physical and digital connectivity to achieve sustainable development and inclusive growth. With this, please join me to give a big round of applause to our panelists here today.
Thank you, Lily.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank our moderator and also our esteemed panelists. Another big round of applause for the insightful session. Thank you very much, and you may now return to your seats. Again, ladies and gentlemen, at the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum 2023, as we bring you the theme of inclusive digital transformation today, we have just witnessed the last panel for this morning's session. And so with that, excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have concluded the invigorating discussions of the morning session at the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum 2023. And it is now time to take a brief pause as we are pleased to announce that we are now entering a well-deserved lunch break. And during this time, you are very welcome, and we invite you to explore the refreshment and also the meals that have been prepared for you at the foyer area. And also during this time, you are also welcome to join us for the Standard Chartered ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Luncheon with the theme Accelerating a Just Transition to Net Zero in ASEAN. This will commence at the Cascade Lounge at the lobby level. Please note that we will reconvene promptly after the lunch break for the afternoon session, which we hope we will regain more insights from our key speakers and also the panelists, which promises to be equally enlightening and engaging. Thank you so much for your participation on this morning session, and we will see you back inside here at Ballroom 3 as we will begin our next afternoon session at 2:30 p.m. local time. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and we hope you have a decent and also an enjoying lunch. We'll see you back soon.
On the MSME segment, BRI Digital Innovation continues to be carried out to facilitate customers in providing services to continue to give value to Indonesia.
BNI harus semakin proaktif dan responsif. BNI terus konsisten untuk mendorong UMKM kita naik kelas.
BNI berkomitmen dalam program-program pemberdayaan UMKM untuk go global.
In Bank Mandiri, we are already one step forward, pioneering Indonesia's transition to low-carbon economy by pursuing net zero emissions on operational by 2030. Let's put our hands together to create a brighter future.
Mining Industry Indonesia, Mind ID, we explore natural resources for civilization, prosperity, and a brighter future.